from the motherland in bondage and chains. Bury our culture and change our names. They claim we're free, yet we are in pain. As long as there's life, there's a lot to gain. Just because we're black, they say we are slaves. Speak of righteousness, they say we are praise. Just because we're black, they say we are slaves. Speak of righteousness, they say we are praise. When God spoke his words, they said he was deranged. Marley sung his songs, they said the same. Malcolm X and Martin Luther fought relentlessly so we could be better. Just because we're black, they say we are slaves. Speak of righteousness, they say we are praise. Just because we're black, they say we are slaves. Speak of righteousness, they say we are praise. Brought us from the motherland in bondage and chains. Bury our culture and change our names. They claim we're free, yet we are in pain. As long as there's life, there's a lot to gain. Just because we're black, they say we are slaves. Speak of righteousness, they say we are praise. Just because we're black, they say we are slaves. Speak of righteousness, they say we are praise.
Very careful.
Tell the youth them to be strong. You can't tell the youth them to preach wrongs. While you trod it on these lands, just remember every man is equal. Yeah, each one teach one. And our Father God, him are the only done. So make we ease and reason. Smoke trees, span the ends, all the deep meds. Take a look at life and don't close your eyes. Sometimes things happen and it's no surprise. And I just, so it go, so it go, so it go, so it go. It's the government no have no heart, them no care about poor people. Yeah, bigger heads no love people again. Them more sad than Hitler them. We see friends now reason again. Vex through whistle a blame. More time it hurt me to see how the face deal with the eagle and them. Regular me see it a pain. Regular me see it a pain. Take a look at life and don't close your eyes. Sometimes things happen and it's no surprise. And I just, so it go, so it go, so it go, so it go. It's the government no have no heart, them no care about poor people. Social commentary, drop the one your principle, you don't know the global will come and do it. Some people life every day it's stress. The high price from JPS, that topic is currently. Jah alone him a go help you. We need food and we no healthy. We are feel the pain, beg you protect we. In our life we have no envy. Take a look at life and don't close your eyes. Sometimes things happen and it's no surprise. And I just, so it go, so it go, so it go, so it go. It's the government no have no heart, them no care about poor people.
listen very, very carefully.
It's all about life in the street. People are suffer, try survive in the heat. Bad mind them out the one, hygiene a do it. That's why enough of them get rifle a beat. Everybody want big ups and want to drive in a Jeep. Every day I'm at the ball when she buy in a read. Not even 5 days, we can't find for the week. Me no see no changes, the same cycle repeat. Give thanks cause life it's a sweet. But keep a eye open every time you go sleep. Cause mankind jealous and them idle go late. Them never yet plant and not try figure it. Bigger heads where you fight for the sake. Now care about the future nor the child where you creep. Them a pray the fat Kyle resonate. The system will slide where you fit.
In the streets where we born and grow, only Jah know and nobody know.
When we talk about ghetto life, talk about ghetto life, ghetto life.
Everybody a priest say them want it though. That's why them a speed and they can't go.
Cause this a real ghetto life, ghetto life. This a real ghetto life, ghetto life. Yeah. Everybody just a pre-success. When me looking at the street, you me see enough stress. Them all a fight for who reach up next. Everybody want floss and a beat up chest. Juvenile in a them teen love sex. Them a breed the fast money, them no need subjects. And if you're unfortunate, please don't vex. I saw the things said cause the streets don't rest.
In the streets where we born and grow, only Jah know and nobody know.
When we talk about ghetto life, talk about ghetto life, ghetto life.
Everybody a priest say them want it though. That's why them a speed and they pan the go.
Cause this a real ghetto life, ghetto life. This a real ghetto life, ghetto life. Yeah. It's all about life in the street. People are suffer, try survive in the heat. Bad mind them out the one, hygiene a do it. That's why enough of them get rifle a beat. Everybody want big ups and want to drive in a Jeep. Every day I'm at the ball when she buy in a read. Not even 5 wheels, we can't find for the week. Me no see no changes, the same cycle repeat. Give thanks cause life it's a sweet. But keep a eye open every time you go sleep. Cause mankind jealous and them idle go late. Them never yet plant and not try figure rape. Bigger heads where you fight for the sake. Now care about the future nor the child when you creep. Them a pray the fat Kyle resonate. The system will slide where you fit.
In the streets where we born and grow, only Jah know and nobody know.
When we talk about ghetto life, talk about ghetto life, ghetto life.
Everybody a priest say them want it though. That's why them a speed and they pan the go.
Cause this a real ghetto life, ghetto life. This a real ghetto life, ghetto life. Yeah.
Segregation.
Recognize royalty, gotta recognize it. Recognize royalty, like they ain't got eyes to recognize royalty. I can feel. Recognize royalty, I can see. Recognize royalty. I want recognize royalty. Royalty inside. Royalty, I can see. Recognize royalty. I can love. Recognize royalty. I recognize it. Royalty.
Yeah, peace once again. Remember to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notifications. All of that helps. Blessings. So today I want to talk a little bit about reparations, and specifically the foundational Black American claim for reparations and what it's based on. Apparently their reparations claims is based on not just their experience with slavery, but post-slavery, their experiences with Jim Crow, redlining, and things of that sort. They also claim that only foundational Black Americans should receive reparations in America, because only Black Americans have a lineage of slavery. But they're not just asking for reparations for slavery. And so my question is, what about Black Americans, the Black immigrants from the Caribbean or Africa who experienced Jim Crow in America or redlining, because there were Caribbean people and Africans in America during the Jim Crow era, and absolutely during redlining. And so my question is, why don't those Caribbean people and Africans that experienced Jim Crow, why don't they qualify for reparations? Why is it that it has to go all the way back to slavery, but they're not asking for just stuff that happened to them during slavery? So that's my concern. That's my question. Have Caribbean Black people and Africans, have they experienced discrimination through Jim Crow and stuff like that? Granted that the population of non-FBA Blacks in the South may have been very small, but regardless of how small it was, wouldn't the descendants of those people also have a right or a claim to reparations if they can show that they lived in the South during the Jim Crow era? And I think they should. I don't get if FBA is going to claim that reparations is not just about slavery, but about stuff that happened after slavery, then anyone who experienced the stuff after slavery should also have a reparations claim. But I think, it's not just Caribbeans in the South, and it's not just about living in the South. I think Jim Crow existed to some degree in the North as well. And that's kind of what I want to talk about just a little bit, I want to, do the usual chat GPT and ask a few questions and see what we come up with in terms of who would be, who would qualify to have a reparations claim. And again, my argument is that whether you are FBA or non-FBA, as long as you're a Black immigrant who experienced Jim Crow or redlining, you should have a claim. So the first question that I'm going to ask ChatGPT is, were there Jim Crow laws in the northern states? Again, there were a lot of Blacks in the North that were of Caribbean descent, African descent, just non-FBA Blacks who may have, encountered Jim Crow laws or Jim Crow type of discrimination in the North. And so I just want to talk about that a little bit. So were there Jim Crow laws in the northern states? And it says, while Jim Crow laws were primarily associated with the southern United States, de facto segregation and discriminatory practices also existed in the northern states, even though they were not always written into law. Northern states, no Jim Crow laws on the books like in the South. It says most northern states did not pass explicit laws mandating racial segregation in the same way southern states did. The South's Jim Crow system involved legally enforced segregation in schools, transportation, restaurants, public accommodations, voting restrictions, example, literacy tests and poll taxes. But de facto segregation existed in the North. Instead of formal laws, the North relied on unwritten rules, discriminatory policies, and institutional racism, including redlining by banks and the federal government to segregate housing, racially restrictive covenants in real estate deeds, employment discrimination, keeping Black people in low-paying jobs, segregated schools due to housing patterns and local policies, violent resistance to integration, example, Northern race riots, Boston's busing crisis. So yeah, that, this is what is being called de facto segregation. But interestingly enough, it is still labeled as institutional racism. If we are going to talk about institutional racism, and if institutional racism is part of our claim for reparations, institutional racism means systemic racism, or it's another way of just kind of speaking about white supremacy. And if white supremacy, institutional racism, systemic racism is all a part of our claim for reparations, why would it only be for FBA? Aren't all Blacks in America victims of institutional racism or systemic racism or white supremacy? Why would that claim be only for foundational Black Americans? That doesn't make sense to me. I also asked ChatGPT what percent of Blacks in the northern states were of Caribbean descent during this time. And it says, to give a solid answer, here's a breakdown of the percentage of Black people in northern US states who were of Caribbean descent, focusing on the Jim Crow era, late 1800s to mid 1900s, especially during the Great Migration and Harlem Renaissance periods, which is the 1910s to the 40s. It said the estimated percent of Caribbean descent Blacks in northern cities, early to mid 20th century, in New York City. By 1930, roughly 10 to 15% of the Black population in New York City was West Indian or Caribbean descent, mostly from Jamaica, Barbados, Trinidad, and Haiti. In Harlem, that percentage could be as high as 25%, especially among cultural elites and professionals. Boston and Philadelphia, Caribbean descent Blacks made up 5 to 10% of the Black population in the early 20th century. Nationwide, likely under 5% of the total Black population in the North during the Jim Crow era was Caribbean born or of Caribbean descent, though concentrated in certain urban areas. So, again, even though the overall percentage was pretty low, Caribbean people were concentrated in a few cities in the North. But the point is that they were there, and they too were victims of institutional racism and white supremacy. And if reparations claim is going to bring up institutional racism and white supremacy, then they would have to be a part of that claim. Why wouldn't they be a part of that claim? And why wouldn't even Caribbean people today who have lived in America for years, why wouldn't they have a claim? Because they would have to have been victims of institutional or systemic racism and of white supremacy as well. White supremacy did not just, go by them, didn't ignore their being here. And so again, why wouldn't they have a claim for reparations as well? And why wouldn't Blacks in the North? I don't think it was just FBA Blacks in the North that were being discriminated against due to redlining, restrictive covenants in real estate. I don't think they made a distinction between who's a Black person that's always been in America or who's a Black person that migrated here recently. I think that those covenants were kind of across the board in terms of Black people. Same with employment discrimination and segregated schools. Again, I think it was across the board. It wasn't just FBA blacks that couldn't go to white schools. It was all blacks, regardless of where you came from. ChatGPT gave a couple more examples of violent resistance to integration in the North. It says in Chicago, there were segregated neighborhoods, redlining, and school segregation. In Detroit, the Detroit plan tried to limit black migration into white areas. And, was that only FBA migration from the South? Or was that black migration from everywhere? Blacks from the Caribbean? No blacks were allowed into these white areas. In New York City, there was informal school segregation. Informal school segregation persisted through zoning. And in Boston, they resisted school integration efforts well into the 70s, well into the 1970s. There was this resistance. So again, my question is, was that resistance and the violence and the segregation, was that only relegated for FBA blacks? Were Caribbean blacks welcomed into white neighborhoods and white schools? Were African blacks, were they exempt from redlining? And if they were not, if all of these if all of this de facto segregation was across the board for all blacks that lived in America, why would at least that portion of reparations, why would that portion of reparations, the post-slavery portion or claim for reparations, why would that just be for foundational Black Americans? That just doesn't sound right to me. And if the idea is that, Jim Crow was, what happened in the South in terms of Jim Crow was a legal form of segregation, and there were laws, and that's why this is more worthy of reparations than the de facto segregation that happened in the North, then if that's true, then FBA should rightfully be asking for reparations from those southern states, not from the federal government. If you're asking for reparations from the federal government, then the blacks in the North that experience this de facto segregation, stuff with busing and all of those other things that we spoke about, they have a right to the reparations that is being paid out by the federal government because of this type of discrimination. And certainly as immigrants, there are certainly immigrants that did not experience the slavery in the South. And if that disqualifies them from getting reparations, then the fact that there are FBA in the North that didn't experience Jim Crow, why doesn't that disqualify them from reparations, or at least reduce their reparations claim? All blacks, all FBA cannot have the same reparations claim, because not all blacks, not all FBA had the same experience in America. They may have all experienced slavery, but they didn't all experience Jim Crow, redlining, all of the post slavery stuff. Not all FBA people experience that, so they can't all be entitled to the same reparations claim. So in summary, ChatGPT says Southern Jim Crow was a legalized racial segregation, but Northern discrimination was informal but still widespread. Both systems oppressed African Americans, but through different legal mechanisms. And again, by African Americans, I don't think they're just talking about FBA. So again, my question is, if FBA, if you're going to claim that reparations is about slavery and post-slavery behavior of white society, then why wouldn't non-FBA blacks have a claim for reparations? Why can't non-FBA blacks or Caribbean blacks who have been here for centuries, why can't they make a claim against redlining? And we know Caribbeans and Africans were here during that time. So is there going to be, is FBA going to make some type of concession for non-FBA blacks to have a claim for reparations as well? Or are they still saying that if you don't have slavery lineage that goes back to the 1800s, then you have no claim? And even more importantly, wouldn't that, if they say that blacks that experienced only Jim Crow and redlining, if you say those blacks do not qualify for reparations, does that not, does that not take away from the FBA argument for reparations? Because your argument is that you were strongly affected by Jim Crow and redlining. And so you are taken away from that argument by saying people who only experienced Jim Crow and redlining shouldn't get reparations. Because why? Because that just doesn't have a long-term effect, a generational wealth effect on those Caribbean people that may have been redlined against or had or experienced segregation. Why wouldn't those people have some form of a claim? And again, I think that you are making this argument at your own expense, because you are kind of putting your own argument, you're just downplaying what you say is your claim for reparations. That's the argument I want to put forth, is that unless you make room for non-FBA blacks to have a claim in reparations, you are diminishing your own reparations claim. In order for your argument that only FBA people should get reparations in America, in order for that argument to hold, then you would have to take away Jim Crow, redlining, institutional racism, systemic racism, white supremacy. All of that would have to be taken away from your reparations claim. And the only thing you would be claiming reparations for is slavery. Because anything after slavery was experienced by non-FBA Americans, by just black immigrants and their descendants. And so you would have to eliminate all of that from your claim in order to say that only you can get reparations here.
Hey, what's happening, people? Blessings to y'all. Thanks for coming in. Can y'all hear me? Somebody out there, let me know if y'all can hear me, please. Brother needs to know. Yeah, y'all must be hearing me. Y'all gotta be hearing me, no? Yeah, y'all hearing me. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for coming in, y'all. Hit that like button, please. Please, if y'all don't mind, hit that like button. Blessings to everyone once again that is in the building. Blessings to you all. We are going to be talking about the first blacks today, the first people to refer to themselves as black people. and whether or not FBA has a claim to the word black, because they obviously want to take hold of it and own it as if it's theirs and no one else is black except for them. They think that they originated it and it's all about them. So they want to be the first black. So that's what we're going to look at today, how much value there is in that claim of theirs. But before we do, you know what I mean, I'm going to let this video here play because I think this is important stuff here as well in terms of who gets reparations. So I'm going to let this video play. As you come in, please hit that like button. If y'all don't mind, hit that like button. If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. Stan? Yes, I. All right, so yeah, let me let this video play. And then we're going to get right into our reading for the day, which is really about the first blacks.
And I think that is the conundrum that you find yourself in. When you say you're the only ones that should get reparations, you are literally diminishing your own reparations claim. A lot of the blacks that lived in the South migrated to the North after the Civil War and after the First World War. You know, maybe half of the blacks that lived down South migrated North. And because of that, they likely did not experience Jim Crow. You know, Jim Crow was mainly relegated in those southern states, and Jim Crow laws took effect after close to half of the black population had left to live up north, looking for industrial jobs. So would those blacks that migrated north during the Great Migration that never experienced Jim Crow, why are they entitled to the same reparations that the blacks that stayed down south, that they are entitled to? Wouldn't the blacks that did not migrate, wouldn't they be entitled to more reparations than the ones that left? I mean, and that's if we agree that reparations is not just about slavery, that it's also about Jim Crow and everything that followed slavery. And, you know, interestingly enough, I think that's kind of why, or at least I'm wondering if that's the reason why they don't want, why they wanted to just go back to slavery. Like, you have to trace your lineage back to slavery. Because that bypasses the whole Jim Crow era thing. But there's just something, you know, I want to say unfair about the idea that they wanted, where black people who experienced Jim Crow in the South, and again, granted that this is less than 1% of the population in the South were of Caribbean or African descent, but still, these are thousands of people who have descendants and should have a claim to some form of reparations. And, you know, their claim to reparations should be on par with the claim for the blacks that left the South and never experienced Jim Crow. And so for that reason, I think that, you know, those black immigrants, if we are being fair, those black immigrants would be entitled to some form of reparations as well. If FBA, if Black Americans, foundational Black Americans, that did not experience Jim Crow, and there are thousands of them. There are actually millions of them that migrated to the north and never experienced Jim Crow. They're still entitled to reparations. Then so are the Black immigrants in the South that did experience Jim Crow. That less than 1% of Black immigrants that lived in the South that did experience Jim Crow, they have a stake in reparations. And so would the Black immigrants in the North that experienced the de facto segregation that happened in the North. They would also be entitled to reparations as well. If foundational Black Americans in the North, who got to the North by migrating north after the Civil War and after both World Wars, and so never experienced Jim Crow, if FBA that did not experience Jim Crow have a claim to reparations, then so do the Black immigrants in the South that experienced Jim Crow and not slavery, and also so do the immigrants in the North that experienced de facto segregation and not slavery. That just seems right. That just seems right and logical. Yeah, so, that's my argument and I'm sticking with it. That's my argument and I'm sticking with it. So, once again, hit that like button, please. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. All of that helps. And yeah, as usual, we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.
Recognize royalty, recognize royalty, gotta recognize royalty, like they
Hey, peace to y'all peoples. Once again, welcome. Claude, listen, if I'm choppy, if you can't hear me good, let me know. You know what I mean? Let me know if you can't hear me good, Claude, because I know you're here to hear me good. You too, DJ Biggs. If I'm breaking up, holler at me. Let me know whether or not I am breaking up. All right, that's what's up. So peace to everyone in the building, man. If it's your first time here, peace to you. Claude Jandam, DJ Biggs, big up yourselves. Shabazz, American Freedman, big up yourself. Kwame, big up yourself, yot. LL, big up yourself, yot. John Holloway. Miss Ruby, you're back. Miss Ruby, good to see you back. Blessings to you. Yeah, man, blessings to everyone in the house. Same day parlay. FBA Dumbo, you made your way back. Blessings to you. Yeah, man. So, we are here once again. For another reading of the day. And today's reading is yeah, hang on. Let me set myself up properly before I even begin this. Yeah. All right, so today I want to talk about this idea of who are the first people to identify as Black. If you haven't done so yet, please hit that like button. So again, today we're here to talk about the idea of who is the first people to identify as Black. Not just to be called Black, but to actually own the word and identify themselves as Black. You know, the FBA wants to take ownership of the word Black. They want to be the only people to be referred to as Black people, and especially as Black Americans, because they feel that the idea of calling themselves Black started with their ancestors in America, that there were no Africans in Africa calling themselves Black. You know, that tradition started here. So it's their word. And so that's the idea that we're going to try and talk about today. That's the idea we're going to try and talk about today, and see just how much validity it has, how much truth is in it, and really see who has ownership of the word Black. So you don't know, I went to good old trusty ChatGPT and asked, I said, ChatGPT, who were the first people in the world to identify themselves as Black? Here's what ChatGPT says. For anyone, someone in the chat asked me what my source is, and my source is whatever ChatGPT sources are. I'm just going to ChatGPT. So take it up with ChatGPT. You're here, you heard. All right. So I asked again. I said, who were the first people in the world to identify themselves as Black? ChatGPT responded, great question. The idea of calling oneself Black as a collective identity is much more recent than people often assume. Here's the breakdown. 1. Ancient references to skin color. In antiquity, people often noticed and described skin tone, but it was usually in a descriptive or comparative sense, not as a group identity. Right? We get that? Descriptive and comparative, not as an identity. For example, ancient Egyptians sometimes described Nubians or Cushites as the Black ones. Kemet versus Nasut, I think is what that is. But this was relational, not a self-applied racial category. This is what people called them. It wasn't what they called themselves. Egyptians themselves called their land Kemet, the Black Land, likely referring to the fertile soil, not racial identity. You hear that, Kwame? Kwame, are you listening? Okay, let me move on. So that's the ancient Egyptians being described as the Black ones. Next, Greek and Roman authors like Herodotus noted Ethiopians as people burnt by the sun, Aethiops. Again, an outsider's descriptor. Ethiopia, an outsider's descriptor. Next, Ethiopia and the term Black. The Greek term Ethiopia essentially meant land of burnt faces. Ethiopians and Nubians were among the earliest groups consistently labeled as Black by outsiders. There's some evidence that Ethiopian Christians in late antiquity and the medieval period embraced blackness in spiritual or symbolic ways. For example, the biblical line, "I am black but comely" in the Song of Songs was sometimes interpreted positively. I am black but comely from the Bible. So it's clear that outside of the question of self-identification, it's clear that the idea of being referred to as black goes back to Africa, right? Africans are the first to have been identified as black. I don't think there's any debate about that. I think everyone would agree with that, even FBA. Okay, so again, it's in the Bible that that people are referred to as black as a descriptor. The Greek term Ethiopia is, goes back to Africa and used as a descriptor. And the Egyptians were also referred to that as that. Next, medieval and early modern era. In the Islamic world, terms like Al-Sudan, the blacks, were used from the 7th century onward to refer to sub-Saharan Africans. The region we now call Sudan literally means land of the blacks. But again, this was primarily an outsider label, not yet a unifying self-identity across diverse African peoples. All right, so these are just examples of Africans being referred to as black. And the next one is, number 4, is the Atlantic slave trade and diaspora. The first time we clearly see large groups of people self-identifying as black comes with the transatlantic world from the 15th to 17th century onward. So self-identifying as black comes with the transatlantic world. 15th century to the 17th century. 15th century is the 1400s, and 17th century is the 1600s. It says enslaved Africans from many ethnic groups, the Igbo, Akan, Yoruba, Wolof, etc., were lumped together by Europeans as Negroes or blacks. In the Americas, these diverse peoples eventually adopted black as a shared identity marker of solidarity and survival in opposition to white. So it was when they got to America that they used it as a self-identifier. Modern political identity. Hey man, peace and blessings to y'all. If you're just coming in, please hit that like button. It would be great if we got them likes up. The likes being up means, works wonders. Means other people get to see what's being see what's being seen and hear what's being read. So if y'all can please hit that like button, that would be amazing. All right, so 5, modern political identity. By the 18th and 19th centuries, especially during the age of abolitionism and early Pan-Africanism, Black leaders like Olaudah Equiano, Frederick Douglass, and later Marcus Garvey embraced Black as a positive identity. The 20th century Black Power and negritude movements made Black an explicit chosen label of pride and resistance. Yeah, so it took us from antiquity right up to the 20th century to Black Power. From antiquity with the Egyptians up till now with the Black Power movement. And so it says, to answer the question directly, the first people in the world described as Black were likely Nubians or Ethiopians in antiquity by outsiders. The first people to self-identify as Black in a collective political and cultural sense were Africans in the diaspora during the Atlantic slave trade and early modern period. Did y'all hear that? It says the first people to self-identify as Black in the collective political and cultural sense were Africans. Africans in the diaspora during the Atlantic slave trade and early modern period, who forged a new identity in contrast to enslavement and racial hierarchy. Now, I want you to notice that it says it was Africans in the diaspora. It didn't say Africans in the Americas. And if it's saying Africans in the diaspora, the question is, well, did Africans outside of America in the diaspora, like Africans in the Caribbean, did they call themselves Black as a collective political thing? Did they also do that? Is it possible that that also happened? Let's see. The reason that the Black people in the Americas called themselves Black was because the white people were calling them Black. And in the Caribbean, were they called Black in the Caribbean as well? Did the white people in the Caribbean call them Black? Let's see, let's think. Yes, they did. And so is it possible that they too in the Caribbean also started to refer to themselves as Black? Because that's what they were referred to as? I mean, is it possible? We'll find out. We'll find out. So I'm going to read again what Chat GPT says. People, I know me says so. A Chat GPT says so. I know me. Don't be mad at me. Be mad at Chat GPT. So it says, to answer directly, the first people in the world described as Black were likely Nubians or Ethiopians in antiquity by outsiders. The first people to self-identify as Black in a collective political and cultural sense were Africans in the diaspora during the Atlantic slave trade and early modern period, who forged a new identity in contrast to enslavement and racial hierarchy. All right. So are we satisfied? Are we satisfied that it was Africans, that the term Black belongs to Africans? I'm sorry, it belongs to Africans in the diaspora. They are the first people to refer to themselves as Black. So for FBA now in 2025 to start doing so is ridiculous. The reason Marcus Garvey, who did it say? The reason Marcus Garvey and Frederick Douglass and Equiano, the reason they referred to themselves and us as Blacks is because the people before them were doing it. The slaves were doing it. That's why it happened. So FBA does not have a monopoly on Black. They do not. It's not your word, bro. You're going to have to find your own word. All right, so, you know, their argument is going to be that or is, well, those Africans were in America, so they were us. So it was still us because they didn't start doing it till they got to America. But I already suggested that it was happening across the diaspora. And that's the next thing I'm going to look at. Right. But what I will also say is those Africans that came here from the 15th to 17th century, who it says were referring to themselves as blacks, those Africans were not considered to be Black Americans. They weren't, the country wasn't even America yet. America didn't even exist. They were referring to themselves as Black people on Spanish and Portuguese and British colonies. So these were not Black Americans. Because America didn't exist. But more importantly, the next question I'm going to ask ChatGPT, or the next question I ask ChatGPT is, where is the next question I ask ChatGPT? There it is. The next question is, when is the first time Caribbean slaves referred to themselves as Blacks? Caribbean people. Like, when did they start in the Caribbean? You know, and this is to kind of rebut their argument that this was just when they got to America that they was doing this. But just to finish my thought, the fact that in the 15th and 17th century, these people were not referring to themselves as Black Americans. They were not Black Americans. They didn't become Black Americans until 1868. America didn't even exist at that time. Did y'all hit that like button yet? Hit that like button, please. All right, so the next question I asked, when is the first time Caribbean slaves referred to themselves as Blacks? And it says, great question. Dang it, here's what I wanted to say. The fact that America did not exist at the time that they were referring to themselves as Blacks means that they were more African than American. These were Africans that just got here in the 15th to 17th century. These are like first generation people that got here, referring to themselves as Black people. And I certainly know that FBA does not consider a first generation African to be an American. They don't today. They do not accept first generation Africans or Caribbeans as FBA. So those first generation slaves that got to the continent, to those colonies in the 15th and 17th centuries, those people certainly were not FBA. They weren't American because America did not exist. And given how the short amount of time they were here, they had no time to have an ethnogenesis. None at all. And given that the ethnogenesis happened after the Atlantic slave trade, the ethnogenesis happened after the Atlantic slave trade. when they banned the Atlantic slave trade and they turned to breeding to produce more slaves. That's when the ethnogenesis happened. That's when the American was made. So everybody before that were Africans, especially the ones in the 15th and 16th century. They were still Africans. So the first people to refer to themselves as blacks were Africans. Don't let them give you this bull crap about no, oh, they were on the island, they were on the continent, so they were Black American. Man, hush your mouth. If I can't be a Black American, them slaves that just arrived can't be no Black Americans. Not the ones that just arrived, not the ones that are first generation, nor second or third generation even. Because y'all don't accept the ones today that are first, second, third as Black Americans. So sorry to say. All right, so Caribbean slaves. When did Caribbean slaves refer to themselves as blacks? It says, great question and an important one. ChatGPT thinks I ask good questions. Y'all think I ask good questions? Drop it in the chat if you think I ask good questions. I think I ask fairly decent questions. It says the history of when enslaved Africans in the Caribbean first referred to themselves as black is a bit complex because early records mostly reflect how Europeans labeled them, not how they described themselves. Here's the breakdown. African identities came first. Enslaved Africans arriving in the Caribbean during the 16th to 18th centuries did not initially see themselves as a single black people. They identified primarily by ethnic group: Akan, Yoruba, Igbo, Wolof, Mandinka, Congo, etc. Same as the ones that arrived in the Americas. Plantation owners, whoa, did y'all see that? When they listed off the tribes that the American slaves came from, did y'all notice it was the same tribes that the Caribbean ones came from? Who noticed that? By show of hands, who noticed that? They came from the same tribes in Africa. They were just shipped to different places. And now here comes FBA talking about they're a different lineage. You may be a different lineage, sir, but you come from the same tribe. You may be a different lineage, but you come from the same tribe. Explain that one. How are you your own lineage, but you come from the same tribe? Breeding, the breeding you went through, you were bred. All right. Next thing, plantation owners often mixed groups deliberately to prevent unified rebellion. But over time, common experiences of slavery created a broader identity. Outsider labels, Negro and Black. Europeans called enslaved Africans Negroes, from Spanish or Portuguese Negro, Black, and sometimes Blacks. This labeling was imposed. It grouped diverse Africans into a single racialized category. Number 3, early self-identification. Evidence suggests that by the late 17th and 18th centuries, enslaved Africans in the Caribbean began to adopt Black as a collective identity, especially in contrast to white. So by the late 17th and 18th centuries. For example, Jamaica's Maroons in the 1700s, that's before FBA, right? 1700s, that's before the breeding, right? That's before the breeding of slaves that took place in America, that took place in the 1800s. 1700s is before that. Jamaicans, Maroons in the 1700s used terms like black people in treaties with the British, distinguishing themselves as a group. In Barbados and Saint Dominique or Haiti, records show enslaved and free Africans using noir or black to describe themselves by the late 18th century. That's the late 1700s, people. The Haitian Revolution, 1791 to 1804. The Haitian Revolution was a turning point. Leaders like Toussaint Louverture and Jean-Jacques Dessalines spoke of uniting as les Noirs, the blacks. Here, black was no longer just an imposed label. It became a political and revolutionary identity, imposing slavery and colonial whiteness. This too was before the breeding began. So this is African people, Caribbean people referring to themselves in a political and revolutionary way as blacks. So what was going on in the 60s with the Black Power movement, that same political revolution, that's not where calling us black started as a political revolutionary movement. It started in the 1700s in the Caribbean and in the 1700s in the Americas with Africans. Started in the 1500s with Africans that was here, and in the 1700s in the Caribbean with Africans that were there. And all of this black people calling themselves blacks has nothing to do with FBA, because FBA was bred in the 1800s. In the 19th century is when FBA was bred. Like how they say, like how the Nation of Islam says the white man was built in a lab by, who was it, Yaqub? But the white man was created in a lab by Yaqub. That's the same way FBA claimed to have been bred by the white man. Yaqub bred the white man, and then the white man bred FBA. Ain't that something? Like FBA kind of wants to follow, even they want their creation to even be similar to the mythical white man's creation, where they were bred or created. But again, back to the topic, the word black was used by Africans. 19th century Caribbean. After Haiti, the use of black spread across the Caribbean. By the 19th century, enslaved and freed Africans in Jamaica, Barbados, and Trinidad were increasingly calling themselves black in rebellions, religious movements, and abolitionist writings. So the answer, in short, the first clear moments when Caribbean slaves referred to themselves as black came in the late 17th to 18th centuries. The late 17th to 18th century is the late 1600s. So it's in the 1600s is when they started. 1600s. Particularly in Maroon treaties and communal resistance. But the Haitian Revolution, 1790s to 1804, was the watershed moment when black became a self-chosen collective identity of unity and power. Did y'all hear what ChatGPT just said? The Haitian Revolution of the 1790s to 1804, before the breeding, The Haitian Revolution was the watershed moment when Black became a self-chosen collective identity of unity and power. So if anybody owns Black, it's the Haitians. Sac passe. And given that they are the only ones among us that can claim a successful revolution, they absolutely deserve to claim it. You heard? I wonder if you heard. So all this FBA talk about they own the word Black, they're the only Blacks. Hush your mouths, please. Hush your mouths, please. You are going against everything that history says. So yeah, man. That's what it is. That's what it is right there. In a nutshell. I don't think it can be any more clearer than that. I think this closes the book on that. I don't see where anyone in their right mind would still be saying this foolishness that they are saying. Unless maybe unbiased Ron. Yeah. But you're done now. I'm gonna drop that link. Does anyone want the link? Claude, you want that link? Claude, did you find any heart yet to hit the link? What about you, Same Day Parlay? Same Day Parlay, you a gambler? Are you a gambler, Same Day Parlay? You making a big gamble with this FBA stuff, Same Day Parlay. You're making a big gamble, youth, and y'all go lose. All right, so let me set myself up to hit this link, man. Let me put this link in the chat. Let me drop this link in the chat. And yeah, did y'all like the video? Did y'all hit that thumbs up on the video? Hit that thumbs up, please. It's only right that y'all hit that thumbs up. Just do it.
I want you to listen very, very carefully.
It's all about life in the street. People are suffer, try survive in the heat. Bad mind them out, you want hygiene a tweet. That's why enough of them get rifle a beat. Everybody want the ghost, I want to drive in a jeep. Every day I'm at the ball when she bike in a read. Not even 5 days, you can't find for the week. Me no see no changes, the same cycle repeat. Give thanks cause life it's a sweet. But keep an eye open every time you go sleep. Come mankind jealous and them idle go late. Them never yet plant and not try figure rape. Bigger heads where you fight for the state. Now care about the future nor the child where you creep. Them a pray the fat Kyle we submit. The system will slide where you fit.
In the streets where we born and grow. Only Jah know and nobody know.
When we talk about ghetto life, talk about ghetto life.
Everybody a priest said them want it though. That's why them a speed and they can't they go.
Cause this a real ghetto life. This a real ghetto life. Yeah. Everybody just a pre-success. When me looking at the street, you me see enough stress. Them all a fight people who reach up next. Everybody want floss and a beat up chest. Juvenile in a them teen love sex. Them a breed the fast money, them no need subjects. And if you're unfortunate, please don't vex. Also the things said cause the streets don't rest.
In the streets where we born and grow. Only Jah know and nobody know.
When we talk about ghetto life, talk about ghetto life.
Everybody a priest said them want it though. That's why them a speed and they pan they go.
Cause this a real ghetto life. This a real ghetto life. Yeah. It's all about life in the street. People are suffer try survive in the heat. Bad mind them out to one hygiene a eat. That's why enough of them get rifle a beat. Everybody want big ups and want fi drive in a jeep. Every day I'm at the ball when she bike in a read. Not even 5 wheels you can't find for the week. Me no see no changes, the same cycle repeat. Give thanks cause life it's a sweet. But keep an eye open every time you go sleep. Come mankind jealous and them idle worry. Them never yet plant and not try figure rape. Bigger heads where you fight for the seed. Now care about the future nor the child when you creep. Them a pray the fat Kyle was a need. The system will slide where you fit.
In the streets where we born and grow. Only Jah know and nobody know.
When we talk about get on life, get on life. Talk about get on life, get on life.
Everybody a priest said them want the dough. That's why them a speed and they pan the go.
Cause this a real get on life, get on life. This a real get on life, get on life. Yeah, 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 yeah.
All right, y'all. What it do? What it do? Ain't nobody hitting the link today? Y'all not coming in? Nobody gonna hit the link today. Y'all not gonna come in today? I'm here, man. Come holler at your boy. Come holler at your boy. Don't just stay in the chat. Come on. I come up when your boss unbiased Ron call me up. I come up because I'm trying to teach y'all how to have heart. Come on up here, y'all. Stop just running y'all mouths in the chat. Did your boss tell y'all not to come up? Same day parlay. Same day parlay. Come on up, man. You just can't stay away. Can you same day parlay? You just can't stay away, bro. I know you like what you're hearing, but you got to pretend as if you don't, because you want to keep that cloud over there. But it's all good, buddy. You can hang around. We here. We here. Kwame, where y'all deal with, my friend? Bless up yourself. DJ Biggs. DJ Biggs. You large yacht. DJ Biggs. You large yacht. Who's with me? Ola. Ola, unmute yourself.
Yo,
What's happening, Ola?
no shaking, man.
Ain't nothing much, bro. I'm here. I'm just chilling. I'm just here
I'm listening to
doing a little
you.
reading today about the word black. Oh, man. Yesterday you came in. You wasn't feeling my reading yesterday. Was it yesterday or the day before? These days go by so fast, bro. It's hard to keep track sometimes. But you
Yeah.
wasn't feeling my reading last time.
No, I was not there.
Say again?
I was not around.
Oh, you just coming in again?
Yeah, before when you came, I was not there. But sometimes you dealing with FBA, you have to have 7 brain, and that 7 brain they have to be a little bit working.
You have to have a what?
7 brain. Your brain have to be 7. You have to have 7 head. Your thinking, your cognitive have to be 7 times something else. Otherwise, you fall asleep with them, because sometimes what they claim, I can understand. What they claim is they can be missed, but that can also be challenged also in terms of DNA test, But say you are from America, let me tell you something, bro. West Africans are not used to the big sea like that. West Africans never built no big boat that can fall into the Atlantic Ocean and far away that would take weeks or months to arrive at somewhere else. There was never a black man in United States before the white man came. Those that believe the Africans came there before the white man was all lying. Black people are not used to be building big boats that can challenge the Atlantic Ocean, the waves and everything. You know? So if there were anything black man in United States, you would have seen their culture, you would have seen everything about them. Culture don't just die off like that. History don't just eliminate like that. Even when they say the Europeans came with disease that almost wiped away the native Indians, at least about millions of them still survive. You know, you don't outbreed yourself out like that. You know, right from United States to Mexico to Guatemala to El Salvador to Ecuador to Venezuela, you can still see the trace of almost resemblance of these people. They almost look like the Mayas and all of them. There's no changes. Maybe the tone, some of them can be depends, but they almost look alike. You know, do you know there was slaves in Suriname? Do you know a place called Suriname? Bro, do you know a place called Suriname in South America?
Yes,
Suriname.
I do.
Okay, Suriname. Do you mean the people there? Also, the indigenous there? No. They will be brought by the people that brought them, the white man. If you watch one documentary, a Suriname was speaking a Ghana language to a Ghanaian man that came there. A Suriname maroon. Few years ago, about 8 years ago, or 7 years ago, or 10 years, I don't know, 10 years ago, were speaking a language called Kumas Karamatis. It was speaking the Ghanaian language to a Ghanaian man that they brought to that village in Suriname, in the jungle. They were speaking similar type of language. Because these Maroons, they run over to the jungle. They escape the white man. You know? The Ghana man said, this guy is speaking the old Ghana language. You know, they were speaking it. It's only United States as saw they want to change history. They want to turn history to be something. I don't know why. Why their history want to be torn. You can say, okay, I'm this, I'm gonna have some white to you. No problem. It's normal.
Ola,
400 years.
Ola,
I'm hearing you.
I'm noticing hold on, Ola. I'm noticing a pattern with you. Like I'll have a show about blood and land, right? And you come in as soon as I drop the link, you come in and say you didn't watch the show, and then you start talking about something else. And then I'll have a show about the first blacks. And then you'll come in as soon as I drop the link, say you wasn't listening to what I said, you didn't catch what I said, and then you start talking about something else. What's up with that, Ola? Say something about the first. We were talking about the first black.
You talk about the blacks, right?
The first blacks, the FBA idea that they are the first people to refer to themselves as black and that they own the word black. That's what we're talking about.
They don't know what black. The black is being used by everywhere that they took them to. The Spanish and the Portuguese come with the word black, Negro. Until today, they're still using it. If you go to some of these countries, Argentina and some of these people, they still call the black people they're Negro. What is Negro in Spanish? Black. In Portuguese, they say black. That's where the Anglo-Saxons picking it from. You know, only that the Anglo-Saxons interpreted to English called black. They were not the only slave to be called black. Brazilians also be called black. Everywhere they picked it to be called black. How can you monopolize a word that's being used to describe so certain group of people, ethnically people that are dark skinned? You cannot. Based on in Nigeria, it's not a word we really use because it's that we have the word called black in our languages, But we don't call ourselves black. We call ourselves by our ethnic group, our tribes' names. But if you understand from a black, you have a black skin, I'm a black man. So is Jamaica you coming from? Would they call it themselves black? That's I just want to know.
Yes.
So how can FBA call himself black? He's the only one that be called black. Because
Yeah, I was hoping one of them would come up and, you know what I mean, explain their position.
bro,
But
you
I'm
grew up
noticing that
bro, you grew up with them, man.
yeah, they're having a really hard time hitting that link. I don't know. The link must not be working on their end. I'm really hoping that you know, one of these guys, same day parlay had to go, he said. Big up yourself, King David. Claude Jean, damn, I wish Claude would just hit the link already. Claude is the first one to time somebody out. And he comes over here, I'm inviting him up, and he'll never hit the link. Only button he can hit is the timeout button to time somebody out. That
Bro,
Claude Van Dam. Hang on a second, Ola. Um, DJ Biggs, man. DJ Biggs just runs his big mouth. DJ Biggs, you should call yourself DJ Big Mouths. DJ Big Mouths. And that's going to be short for DJ Big Mouths in the chat. Because you refuse to come up on the panel and run your big mouth. But I dare, I'm throwing down the gauntlet, DJ Biggs. Let's have a DJ battle. Come on, DJ Big's Mouth. Let's go. Let's go. Who else is in the chat? Who else is in the chat that doesn't have the heart to come up here? It is what it is. It is what it is. I'll take that for what it is. But go ahead, Ola. You wanted to say something.
so bro, you grew up with them, bro. You grew up with black Americans. You're a black American yourself. You know, I really don't know the confusion about all these things. You know, I'm just an African. Just try to chip in. If you have to choose between me and and black, you would choose black Americans. These are the people you know and the culture you know, right? You know, maybe you could just have misunderstanding of lineage divide or something like that.
Hang on a second, Ola. I actually forgot to say something that I wanted to say during my reading. So let me take the opportunity to say that now, if you don't mind, Ola. So Black Americans really want to claim the word black as if they're the first people to call themselves black. And for some reason, it's very important to them to have claim to some type of identifier that is separate from all other black people. And that's why they want to claim black for themselves and say, you can't have it, y'all can't have it. But given what I've read, it's pretty clear that the word black is already taken. Africans are the ones that came up with that term as a unifying term. Africans did that. So if you want a term that you came up with as a self-identifier for yourself, right, that FBA came up with themselves, you already have one, but it's not black. Guess what it is? It's the N-word. It's the N-word. Y'all are the first. You can have that. Y'all are the first blacks in history to use the N-word as a self-identifier. So you can't have black. But I'm telling you, you can have the N-word. You can have nigga. I'm hoping you take it from us. Please take it. I don't want to claim that. I don't want to claim that. I don't know if any Africans want to claim that. I don't know of any Caribbeans that want to claim that. We can't claim that. That's yours. That's really what's yours. If you want a self-identifier that y'all came up with, if that's really something that's so important to you, that's the option you have. Or you're going to have to come up with something else. But right now, that's the option you have. Y'all are FNA, Foundational N-word Americans. I mean, it is what it is, but that is what it is. If you disagree with me, please hit that link. The link is pinned. Come up and speak with me. And you can hit the link right after you hit the like button. If you haven't hit the like button yet, hit the like button. Hit the like button. All right, go ahead, Ola. Wait, what happened? Ola fell off? Ola fell off. I don't know. Ola said he ain't down with that type of talk. Ola was out of there. But nobody's going to come up and hit that link? Nobody? None of y'all? At least hit the like button. At least hit the like button. You know, I do have other readings, so since nobody's coming up, I'm just gonna, you know what I mean, do another reading, you know? Just gonna do one more reading. I'm gonna find a good reading to do, something that is that's interesting. I think I know which reading I'm gonna do. But let's see which one I come across first. Give me a second, would you?
I want you to listen very, very carefully.
Tell the youth them to be strong. You can't tell the youth them to preach wrongs. While you try it on these lands, just remember every man is equal. Yeah, each one, and a father God, him a the only done. So make we peace and reason. Smoke trees, span the ends, all at deep meds. Take a look at life and don't close your eyes. Sometimes things happen and it's no surprise. And I just so it go, so it go, so it go, so it go. It's the government no have no heart, them no care about poor people. Yeah, bigger heads no love people again. Them more than Hitler them. We see friends now reason again. Vex through whistle a blame. What time it hurt me to see how the face. Deal with the eagle of them. Regular me see it a pain. Regular me see it a pain. Take a look at life and don't close your eyes. Sometimes things happen and it's no surprise. And I just so it go, so it go, so it go, so it go. It's a government no have no heart, them no care about poor people. Social commentary. Drop the one your principle, you don't know the global will come and do it. Some people life every day it's stress. The high price from JPS, that topic is currently. Jah alone him a go help we. We need food and we no healthy. We are feel the pain, beg you protect we. In a life we have no fenve. Take a look at life and don't close your eyes. Sometimes things happen and it's no surprise. And I just so it go, so it go, so it go, so it go. It's a government no have no heart, them no care about poor people.
you to listen very, very carefully.
It's all about life in the street. People are suffer, try survive in the heat. But man, them up to one hygiene a tweet. That's why enough of them get rifle a beat. Everybody want the cops and want to drive in a jeep. Every day I'm at the ball when she buy in a read. Not even 5 days, we can't find for the week. Me no see no changes, the same cycle repeat. Give thanks cause life it's a sweet. But keep an eye open every time you go slave. Come mankind jealous and them idle worry. Them never yet plant and not try figure it. Bigger heads where you fight for the sake. Now care about the future nor the child where you creep. Them a pray the fat Kyle was submit. The system will slide where you fit.
In the streets we born and grow. Only Jah know and nobody know.
When we talk about ghetto life, ghetto life. Talk about ghetto life, ghetto life.
Everybody a priest said them want the dough. That's why them a speed and they pan the go.
Cause this a real ghetto life, ghetto life. This a real ghetto life, ghetto life. Yeah, 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 yeah. Everybody just a pre-success. When me looking at the street, you me see enough stress. Them all a fight people who reach up next. Everybody want floss and a beat up chest. Juvenile in a them teen love sex. Them a breed the fast money, them no need subjects. And if you're unfortunate, please don't vex. Also the things said, cause the streets don't
In the streets we born and grow. Only Jah know and nobody know.
When we talk about ghetto life, talk about ghetto life.
Everybody a priest said them want the dough. That's why them a speed and they pan the go.
Cause this a real ghetto life, ghetto life. This a real ghetto life, ghetto life. Yeah, 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 yeah. It's all about life in the street. People are suffer, try survive in the heat. But mind them up to one hygiene a tweet. That's why enough of them get rifle a beat. Everybody want the cops and want to drive in a jeep. Every day I'm at the ball when she buy in a read. Not even 5 wheels, we can't find for the week. Me no see no changes, the same cycle repeat. Give thanks cause life it's a sweet. But keep an eye open every time you go slave. Come mankind jealous and them idle worry. Them never yet plant and not try figure it. Bigger heads where you fight for the seed. Now care about the future nor the child where you creep. Them a pray the fat Kyle was submit. The system will slide where you fit.
In the streets we born and grow. Only Jah know and nobody know.
When we talk about ghetto life, talk about ghetto life.
Everybody a priest said them want the dough. That's why them a speed and they pan the go.
Cause this a real ghetto life, this a real ghetto life, ghetto life. Yeah, 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 yeah.
All right, y'all. Here we go. Holler at me if I'm coming in loud and clear. Can y'all hear me? I'm about to do another little piece of reading. Can somebody in the chat let me know home is sound? DJ Biggs, home is sound. Can y'all hear me good out there? I don't want to be doing all this reading and I can't be heard nice and clear. Wanna hear? All right, so I'm just gonna trust that I'm able to be heard. If y'all can't hear me out there, especially my moderators, if y'all can't hear me out there, please let me know so that I can adjust myself. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about today is as certainly as FBA wants to claim Black for themselves, they also want to take claim for the worst atrocity in history. That's what they want to state claim for. So that's the next thing I really want to talk about. Do they really have a case to say that their history of slavery and oppression is worse than everybody else's? Because that's something that they literally claim. And what they do in order to make that claim is they have to add on to slavery, Jim Crow, redlining, and things like that happened after slavery. And they think that that makes theirs a lot worse. But from the reading that I did about the AU and their global reparations fund, from that reading, I realized that the AU and Caribbean countries are not just asking for reparations for slavery either. They're also asking for reparations for colonialism. So it's slaves. So where in America, it's slavery and Jim Crow and everything else. In the Caribbean and Africa, their reparations movement is about slavery and colonialism. Okay, so I think given conversations that I've had, it's clear to me that it was better to be a slave in America than in the Caribbean. Right? So the slavery that was experienced, just the slavery alone that was experienced in America was not as harsh as the slavery in the Caribbean. The slaves in the Caribbean had a way shorter life expectancy than slaves in the Americas. America has been a better standard of living for Black people than at all points in its history, even during slavery. So that's what we're here to compare. We're here to compare those two things, and we're going to talk about colonialism and just see whether or not the colonialism that was experienced in the Caribbean, maybe even Africa as well, whether that colonialism is on par with the post-slavery Jim Crow redlining, white supremacy, systemic racism that was experienced, or that Blacks in America claim to experience. So we're just going to try and do a comparison of both of those. So, I'm going to keep going until somebody hits the link, but I'm in a reading mood. So I'll read for a little bit and then see what happens. So the first question I asked ChatGPT is, what is colonialism? And it says, colonialism is a system of domination in which one country establishes control over another territory, its people, and resources. It usually involves political rule, economic exploitation, cultural domination, and social restructuring imposed by the colonizing power. Key features of colonialism: political control. The colonializing nation imposes its government, laws, and authority over the colonized region, often dismantling local systems of governance. 2. Economic exploitation. Colonizers extract wealth through land, labor, minerals, or trade from the colony for the benefit of the mother country. This often included slavery, forced labor, and resource extraction. 3. Cultural domination. Colonizers often sought to impose their language, religion, and cultural values while devaluing or suppressing indigenous cultures and traditions. 4. Settlement and displacement. In some cases, like in the Americas, Australia, and parts of Africa, colonizers settled permanently, displacing or marginalizing the native population. Historical examples: European colonialism in the 15th and 20th centuries. Spain and Portugal colonized much of Latin America. Britain and France colonized large parts of Africa and Asia. Settler colonialism. In North America, Australia, and South Africa, colonizers established permanent settlements, often displacing native peoples. The effects: colonialism reshaped global trade, politics, and societies. It left lasting legacies, economic inequality, cultural hybridization, political borders, racial hierarchies, and struggles for independence. I mean, are those things on par with what happened in North America? Economic inequality, cultural hybridization, political borders, racial hierarchies, struggles for independence. Are those legacies of colonialism as harsh as the legacies of Jim Crow? I'm just asking the question. It says some scholars distinguish between colonialism, direct political and economic control, and imperialism, broader domination, including indirect influence. So, you know, the two are kind of different. So the next question I asked ChatGPT, so that is the type of stuff. The next question I asked ChatGPT is, was the Caribbean colonized after slavery ended? And it says, great question. Let's break it down because colonization and slavery, while closely connected, didn't end at the same time in the Caribbean. Timeline of Caribbean colonization and slavery. 1942 onward, European colonization of the Caribbean began with Columbus's arrival, first by Spain and later by Britain, France, the Netherlands, and Denmark. Colonies were established long before slavery expanded. 19th to the 16th centuries, enslaved Africans were brought to the Caribbean to work on plantations. The wealth of the colonies depended on slavery. Slavery abolition dates. Britain in 1834, apprenticeship until 1838. So Britain abolished slavery in 1834, France in 1848, the Netherlands in 1863 with a 10-year transition period in Suriname until 1873, and Spain in 1886 in Cuba and 1873 in Puerto Rico. I wonder if America is the only country that went to war to end slavery. I think America is the only country that went to war to end slavery. I think that means a lot. I'm not sure what it means yet, but I think that that means and says a lot. Colonialism after slavery. Even after slavery ended, colonial rule continued for more than a century in most Caribbean islands. Freedom from slavery did not equal independence. In the British colonies, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, and others remained under British rule until the mid-20th century. Jamaica, for example, only gained independence in 1962. Yeah, apologies. So where were we? British colonies. Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, and others remained under British rule until the mid-20th century. Jamaica, for example, only gained independence in 1962. French colonies, Guadeloupe and Martinique are still French territories today. Dutch colonies, Suriname gained independence in 1975. Curaçao and Aruba are still part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Spanish colonies, Cuba and Puerto Rico, were Spain's last Caribbean colonies until the Spanish-American War in 1898. U.S. control. After 1898, Puerto Rico and Guam became U.S. territories. The US occupied Cuba until 1902 with lasting influence. Key point, the Caribbean was colonized long before slavery, and colonialism lasted long after slavery ended. Slavery was one institution within colonial rule, but the colonial system, political control, economic dependency, and cultural domination persisted until the 20th century, and in some cases still exists. So as surely as Black Americans after slavery had sharecropping and Jim Crow and the Black Codes and redlining, mass incarceration, white supremacy, systemic racism, as surely as the Black Americans had those things to deal with up until the 20th century, and it's even said to be going on today. As surely as that's true, it is also true that in the Caribbean, there has been colonialism. After slavery, there has been colonialism, which persisted up to the 20th century and even is said to be happening today. So whose oppression was worst? Is colonialism easier to handle than Jim Crow? Is the economic inequality that's brought about by colonialism, is that economic inequality, is that easier to deal with than the economic inequality brought about by Jim Crow? I'm not so sure. Next thing I asked ChatGPT, how were Caribbean countries oppressed under colonialism after slavery ended? And I think I just wanted to get a little more in depth into exactly what happened, not a broad definition of what colonialism is and what happens, but I wanted to know distinctively within the Caribbean, how are the Caribbean islands affected by colonialism, just to kind of continue making that comparison. And ChatGPT says, excellent follow-up. ChatGPT loves me, loves my questions. I make ChatGPT think. Do I make y'all think? You know I do. DJ Biggs, DJ Big Mouths. DJ Big Mouths. Do I ask good questions to ChatGPT? You like the questions I ask? All right, well, ChatGPT does. That's all that matters, buddy. So ChatGPT says, so again, I asked, how were Caribbean countries oppressed under colonialism after slavery ended? It says, excellent follow-up. The end of slavery in the Caribbean, 1830s to 1880s, depending on empire, did not mean true freedom. Colonial powers continued to oppress Caribbean societies in political, economic, and cultural ways. Here's a breakdown. And just to be, clear, those are the same ways that Black Americans claim to have been affected by Jim Crow and everything else, politically, economically, and culturally. And colonialism here is affecting Caribbean folks in the same way. Political oppression, no self-rule. Even after emancipation, Caribbean colonies were governed directly from London, Paris, and Amsterdam. Local assemblies existed in some places, but governors appointed by Europe had the final say. Limited political rights. Freed Black and mixed race populations had very restricted voting rights, often tied to property ownership, literacy, or income, barriers designed to exclude the majority. Freed Black and mixed race populations had very restricted voting rights, often tied to property ownership, literacy, or income, barriers designed to exclude the majority. Isn't that what I mean? Next, suppression of dissent. Uprisings, worker protests, or nationalist movements were often crushed. For example, Morant Bay Rebellion in Jamaica in 1865 was violently put down by the British. Strikes in Trinidad and Barbados in the 1930s led to massacres by colonial troops. I wonder, when was a rebellion in America crushed by massacres by the American government? When did the American government massacre people that were rebelling? No, not people that were rebelling. Sorry, they weren't even rebelling. They were on strike. They were striking. When was a rebellion violently put down in America? When was the last time that happened? I don't know. What's his name? No, what's his name? Nat Turner? Maybe. So the next thing, economic oppression, plantation economy. The plantation economy maintained. After slavery, freed people often had little choice but to return to plantations for low wages. Oh, wait a minute. What's that called again? They call that something. Somebody tell me what they call that. Sharecropping? Isn't that what that is? In America, sharecropping? Isn't that the same thing that they're saying happened in the Caribbean? After slavery, freed people often had little choice but to return to plantations for low wages. Land remained in the hands of white elites or absentee European landlords. That's that sharecropping. Isn't that sharecropping or something? Somebody, is that sharecropping? Okay. Indentured labor importation. Britain imported workers from India from 1838 to 1917 and other regions to replace slave labor, keeping wages low and creating divisions among workers. That sounds like what happened in America. Yeah, it does. Indentured labor importation. Was there indentured labor going on in America? Could it have been to keep wages low? Could it have been to keep wages low like it was in the Caribbean? I wonder. Exploitation of resources. Profits from sugar, bananas, bauxite, and other exports flowed to Europe while the colonies remained poor. Ain't that something? And last, taxation without benefits. Colonies were heavily taxed, but funds largely served colonial administration, not local development. So again, this all sounds very similar to what they say is the legacy of Jim Crow and redlining and white supremacy and systemic racism and the whole shebang. So how is what happened in America any worse than what the Caribbean people experienced? Black American descendants of slaves did not have a rougher go at it than Caribbean folks. Not during slavery, and not after slavery. Not before, not during, and not after slavery did y'all have it better than us, or better than anyone else. So if a part of your claim to be the only blacks, if a part of your claim to be the only blacks is the fact that your oppression was unique, sorry to burst your bubble. Really sorry to burst your bubble. So the next piece, social and cultural oppression. It says racial hierarchies. Although slavery ended, colonial society maintained white supremacy. Uh-oh, look at that. White supremacy in the Caribbean. White supremacy in the Caribbean. White supremacy in the Caribbean. Lighter-skinned populations often had more privilege and access to education or jobs. Who were these lighter-skinned people? Let me see. By lighter-skinned, can we replace lighter-skinned with copper-skinned? I believe we can. Were these the lighter-skinned descendants of the elites? Or were these the lighter-skinned descendants of the elites? I wonder. So here we have white supremacy as well in the Caribbean. So all of your complaints about your experiences in America does not make your oppression worse than everybody else. It does not. And it does not give you the right to be the only black. You're bugging. Next thing. Education and religion as control. Colonial schools taught European history, language, and culture while suppressing African and indigenous traditions. Christian missionaries often tried to erase African spiritual practices. And I believe that's a part of FBA complaint as well. And their call for reparations has to do with that type of oppression as well. Movement restrictions. Freed people in some colonies faced vagrancy laws and curfews, limiting their ability to move freely or form independent communities. Golden Brown. Pick up yourself, Golden Brown. I'm going to take questions after I'm done with this reading. Just let me finish with the reading, and then the link is pinned. But you can hit it now if you want, but I'm going to finish the reading so I get it out the way. And then I'll take all your questions, because you're asking really good questions, and I would love to address them. But I just want to get through this reading. So Golden Brown, good to see you here. Chukwu Igwe, bless up yourself. Good to see you here. Can y'all please hit that like button? Hit that like button. The like button will like you back if you hit the like button. So hit the like button, please. Just do it. Undisputed truth. Undisputed truth. I know you believe it's jealousy. I know it. But hit the like button regardless, okay? Just hit the like button. And subscribe anyway. Show me you're not jealous. Show me how to not be jealous and envious. And hit the likes button and subscribe. Teach me the ways, your elite ways. Teach me the ways of your elite whiteness. Do it now. Just hit the like button. All right, so the next thing, the next form of oppression under colonialism, resistance and rise of nationalism. Despite these oppressions, Caribbean people resisted through peasant farming. Many freed people pooled money to buy land and establish independent farmlands, creating a foundation for economic survival. Labor movements. Workers organized strikes and unions, pushing for better wages and rights. Pan-African and nationalist movements. Leaders like Marcus Garvey of Jamaica, Aimé Césaire of Martinique, and later Eric Williams of Trinidad and Norman Manley of Jamaica helped build the road toward independence. You hear that? Did y'all hear that? Pan-African and nationalist movements. But right now I'm talking about the Pan-Africanist part. It says Pan-Africanism helped build the road towards independence for these Caribbean countries. Pan-Africanism. So when you continue to ask, what can Pan-Africanism show that is concrete? Take it from someone that does not identify as a Pan-Africanism. Take it from someone that is not a Pan-Africanism. One thing that Pan-Africanism can make claim to is that they helped to build the road towards independence for these countries. Pan-Africanism was there. Where was FBA? And what independence did FBA gain? Where? Civil rights movement? Okay. But again, if we're talking about making comparisons, again, you got nothing over us, buddy. We got an independent country. Y'all got civil rights. You heard? So in summary, after slavery, Caribbean countries were still colonies trapped in dependency, politically ruled from abroad and denied rights, economically exploited for cheap labor and raw goods, culturally stripped of their heritage and forced into European molds. This is why many scholars say slavery ended, but colonial oppression simply took a new form until independence struggles succeeded in the mid-20th century. Yes? Yeah. So can we say that slavery followed by colonialism in the Caribbean is on par with slavery followed by Jim Crow legacy in the Americas? Can we say they're on par? I mean, if I say they're on par, it's because I'm just trying to not, if I was, you know what I mean? I think the slavery in the Caribbean was definitely worse. There's no debate about that. So the only thing we're putting on par is the colonialism and the Jim Crow stuff. Jim Crow, we could say, is dead. Colonialism, though, I don't know about all that. I don't know. But yes, I think if the slavery in the Caribbean can be seen as worse, then what followed the slavery in the Caribbean can also be seen as worse. But I'm going to say it's on par, at the very least. So, next question I asked ChatGPT. Let's see if ChatGPT likes this question. ChatGPT said, I asked ChatGPT, I said, was there any form of Jim Crow laws in the Caribbean? Was there any form of Jim Crow laws in the Caribbean? And it says, that's a really insightful question. I don't know if ChatGPT is trolling me, but no, it's a good question. Don't y'all think it's a good question? It's a good question. It says, that's a really insightful question. The Caribbean did not have Jim Crow laws in the exact way the US South did, but there were similar systems of racial and social control under colonial rule. Instead of a formal legal code like Jim Crow, oppression came through colonial laws, economic policies, and social practices that maintained white dominance. So as certainly as there wasn't Jim Crow in the American North, but there was de facto Jim Crow in the North. And there was economic discrimination going on in the North. It wasn't labeled Jim Crow, but it was happening. It's the same way in the Caribbean. It wasn't called Jim Crow laws, but there were policies in place and practices in place that was about maintaining white supremacy. Legal restrictions, property and voting restrictions. After emancipation, voting rights were often tied to land ownership, income, or literacy. This included the majority of freed Black and mixed-race populations, much like Jim Crow disenfranchised Black Americans. That was Jim Crow. That was ChatGPT that said that. Next one. Vagrancy laws. Freed people could be arrested if they were unemployed or loitering, forcing many back into plantation labor at low wages. Vagrancy laws. Same as what was in the South. Same as what was here. Vagrancy laws. Curfews and pass systems. In some islands, restrictions on movement and curfews for Black populations resembled US segregation controls. Look at that. Look at that. So what was going on in the Caribbean mirrors what was going on in America. Social segregation. And again, we're talking about Jim Crow type laws in the Caribbean. Social segregation, housing and public spaces. While not always codified, racial separation existed. White elites, white elites. Was that FBA? Is that talking about FBA when it says white elites? I don't know, maybe. White elites lived in segregated neighborhoods or estates, and Black populations were confined to poorer districts. Clubs and institutions. Many hotels, social clubs, and institutions excluded non-whites or imposed restrictions well into the 20th century. Marriage and social status. Informal but powerful norms discouraged interracial marriage or treated darker-skinned people as socially inferior. I mean, that's all the same thing that's written up as Jim Crow legacy in America. And given that throughout the Jim Crow era, given that after slavery ended and up throughout the Jim Crow era and up to even today, given that you had Blacks moving from the Caribbean to come here, it's clear that whatever was going on in the Caribbean was worse than what was going on here, because Blacks were having it better here. Certainly as they had it better during slavery here, they had it better here post-slavery, which is why Blacks in the Caribbean were moving here, because when they got here, they were treated just like the Blacks here were treated. They too were victims of white supremacy when they got here, and as they're still getting here. And as if we agree that white supremacy exists. If we agree that white supremacy is a real thing and that it exists, then what I am saying is all truth. And ChatGPT is here to back me up. Next, economic segregation, land ownership. Whites or lighter-skinned elites kept control of the best land and economic resources. And notice that they're separating the economic elites from just ordinary whites. like FBA claim to be not of the ordinary whites, they're of the elites. But whites or lighter-skinned elites kept control of the best land and economic resources. Black freed people were often pushed into small plots or forced to work as wage laborers. Job restrictions. Skilled or higher paying jobs often went to whites or light-skinned Creoles, while darker-skinned workers were relegated to low-wage plantation or manual labor. Number 4, comparison to U.S. Jim Crow. In the U.S. South, Jim Crow was explicit law, segregated schools, buses, bathrooms, drinking fountains, etc. In the Caribbean, racial control was more about colonial administration, plus class, hierarchy, and colorism. It was enforced by colonial laws, vagrancy and voting limits, and social exclusion rather than a codified segregation system. And again, as examples, it gives Jamaica, 1865 Morant Bay Rebellion. After this uprising, Britain clamped down on political rights, dissolving Jamaica's assembly and ruling directly through governors. Next, Trinidad and Guyana, the indentureship period. Systems of control divided Afro-Caribbean and Indo-Caribbean workers to weaken solidarity. Isn't that what they said happened with Bacon's rebellion? Yeah, where they tried to weaken solidarity between the white indentured workers and the black workers and the black slaves. Isn't that what they said happened here? Even that happened in the Caribbean. They're like mirror images of each other. As certainly as we came from the same tribes in Africa, as certainly as we came from the same tribes in Africa, we experienced the same atrocities after slavery and during slavery. We experienced the same atrocities. In the Barbados and Bahamas, elites maintained whites-only clubs and schools went well into the 20th century. There were whites-only schools. And why wouldn't what's going on, what happened here, be happening in the Caribbean? Why wouldn't it? Why wouldn't they treat their slaves the same way during slavery and after slavery? Why wouldn't they? So summary, the Caribbean did not have Jim Crow laws in name, but colonial oppression functioned similarly, using voting restrictions, vagrancy laws, land control, color hierarchies, and social exclusion to maintain white supremacy long after slavery ended. ChatGPT offered to give me a comparison chart of Jim Crow versus colonial oppression. So Jim Crow US oppression versus colonial oppression in the Caribbean. So it gives an aspect, then Jim Crow and colonial. So the first aspect, political rights under Jim Crow, Black Americans disenfranchised through poll taxes, literacy tests, grandfather clauses. And in colonial Caribbean post-slavery, their voting was tied to property, income, and literacy. Most Black and working class populations were excluded. The next aspect, legal restrictions. Under Jim Crow, there were explicit segregation laws, schools, buses, bathrooms, public facilities. And in the colonial Caribbean, there were vagrancy laws, curfews, restrictions on movement, targeted freed Black people and poor laborers. The next aspect, social segregation. Under Jim Crow, whites and Blacks were forced into separate neighborhoods, schools, and public spaces. And in colonial Caribbean, informal segregation, social clubs, hotels, churches, and elite institutions often excluded non-whites. The next aspect, economic control. Under Jim Crow, whites dominated land, business, and skilled jobs. Sharecropping trapped many in poverty. In the Caribbean, land ownership concentrated in white or elite hands. Plantations and estates dominated the economy. The next aspect, cultural suppression. Under Jim Crow, African American history and culture was excluded from schools, and there was forced assimilation. Under colonialism, colonial schools prioritized European history, language, and culture. African traditions marginalized. And the last aspect, violence and repression. Under Jim Crow, there was lynching, racial terror and police repression, enforced white supremacy. And under colonialism, worker uprisings and rebellions violently suppressed. Example in Morant Bay, 1865, and the 1930s labor riots. So in short, says ChatGPT, the US South used explicit racial segregation laws like Jim Crow, while the Caribbean under colonialism relied on colonial law, plus economic control, plus social exclusion to achieve a very similar outcome, keeping the majority Black population oppressed and politically powerless. So I think that makes it pretty clear. That makes it pretty clear. And if it does not, I actually asked ChatGPT another question. I said, did banks in the Caribbean also discriminate during this time? Was there any form of redlining going on in the Caribbean? And it says, yes, banks in the Caribbean played a big role in reinforcing racial and class inequality during and after slavery. While there weren't always formal Jim Crow style banking laws, discrimination happened through policies, access, and practices that kept Black and working class people from building wealth. Number one, access to banking. Exclusion of freed Blacks. In the 19th century, most banks were controlled by colonial governments, planters, or European merchant houses. Freed Black people, who often had little collateral or land, were denied access to credit. Preference for whites and elites. Loans and financial services were extended mainly to white planters, merchants, and lighter-skinned elites who already owned land. And foreign-owned banks. Major banks were branches of British, French, or Dutch institutions. They prioritized serving colonial trade and plantation owners, not local populations. Number two, credit and loans. Land was collateral. Since freed blacks were largely landless after emancipation, they couldn't meet collateral requirements. This meant they had to rely on informal credit systems like SUSU, a rotating saving system that survives today in the Caribbean and diaspora. So all of these little things that we have in Jamaica, SUSU, when we draw partner, partner. How many people out there know about being in a partner? All of these things are because of the legacy of colonialism, because we were locked out of, banking opportunities and getting credit and stuff like that. So we had to come up with these ways. So again, it says this meant they had to rely on informal credit systems like SUSU, a rotating saving system. Yeah, man, a rotating saving system. I get it this week. You get it next week. Every week, somebody else gets the pot. Next, high interest rates. When loans were offered to poorer or black populations, interest rates were often punitive, trapping borrowers in cycles of debt. And favoring plantation owners, banks offered credit to keep plantations running, ensuring the colonial economy and European profits continued, rather than supporting small farmers or local entrepreneurs. So again, man, all of this mirrors what was going on in America. Adding on Jim Crow and redlining and white supremacy and this and that, none of that makes what you did worse than what other Africans or other black people experienced. None of it. None of it makes you the best of the oppressed, the best oppressed. I mean, y'all be going for the weirdest titles. Y'all be going for the weirdest titles. Number three, banking and racial or class hierarchy. Color and class bias. Even within the free population, lighter-skinned elites had better access to banking services than darker-skinned Afro-Caribbeans. Economic segregation. Black workers and peasants often had to pool money in community savings groups since formal institutions excluded them. Barriers to entrepreneurship. Many Black-owned businesses faced difficulty accessing startup capital, limiting upward mobility. Need I say more? Need I say more? There is something more we can say, and ChatGPT is going to say it. Number four, long-term effects. The exclusion from formal banking preserved economic inequality long after slavery ended. Is that generational wealth? Is that what they're talking about? Generational wealth? Is that? It forced Afro-Caribbean communities to rely on alternative systems like SUSU, credit unions, and later cooperative banks, which became central to Black economic survival. Generational wealth. They were locked out of generational wealth. Hello? By the mid-20th century, nationalist leaders began pushing for indigenous banks and credit unions to break colonial control of finance. So in summary, Caribbean banks absolutely discriminated after slavery, not always by law, but by practice. They mainly served colonial trade and white elites, while excluding freed Black populations. This financial exclusion was just as damaging as political disenfranchisement disenfranchisement because it kept the majority from building wealth or independence. It kept the majority from building wealth or independence. So when they tell you, as a Caribbean immigrant that comes here, when they tell you that the reason y'all come here and are able to do better is because you didn't have to deal with generational wealth, this lack of generating wealth over your generations, tell them to knock it off. Knock it off. We too were locked out of having generational wealth. But come here, and by the first generation, we start our generational wealth. Yeah, yeah. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? I think that covers everything. Doesn't that cover everything? DJ Biggs, does that cover everything? D-Rels, did you like the video? Did I cover everything? I think I covered everything. Solomon, bless up to you, Solomon. Did I leave anything out? Was there anything I left out to show whether or not colonialism is different from Jim Crow stuff? Did I leave anything out, Solomon? Anything? Somebody tell me if I left anything out. Sunchild, did I leave anything? Sunchild, did I leave anything out? Blessings to you, Sunchild. Did you like the video, Sunchild? Like the video, no yacht? Yeah, weird pan. Like the video, yacht. Like the video. All right, so last question I asked ChatGPT. Has there been any form of mass incarceration? So there was that other little piece, mass incarceration, because I do think mass incarceration is a part of the FBA HR 40 claim for reparations. So the next question, so I did leave something out. Long story short, I left something out. Mass incarceration. Has there been any form of mass incarceration in the Caribbean by colonial powers, is what I asked ChatGPT. And can you guess what it says? Solomon, you want to guess what it says? DJ Biggs, you want to guess what it says? It says, yes. There were forms of mass incarceration in the Caribbean under colonial rule. Though they look different from the US prison industrial system. Instead of building giant penitentiaries, colonial authorities used prisons, jails, workhouses, and forced labor camps to discipline Black populations after slavery ended. These systems targeted rebellion, labor unrest, and unruly freed people. Need I say any more now? Okay, I'll say a little more. Number one, criminalization after slavery, vagrancy laws. Freed people without steady plantation jobs could be arrested for idleness or loitering. This criminalized poverty itself. Labor discipline. They said they criminalized poverty. Next thing, labor discipline. Colonial governments used prisons to force people back into plantation work when they resisted low wages. Next, high conviction rates for minor offenses. Petty crimes like stealing food, trespassing, or violating curfews were punished harshly. Not nicely, harshly. Number two, prison conditions. Workhouses and penal labor. Prisoners were often forced into hard labor, road building, plantation work, dock work, essentially a continuation of slavery under a different name. Harsh punishments, whipping, shackling, and solitary confinement were common, especially in the 19th century. Overcrowding. By the late 1800s, many colonies saw rising prison populations as colonial powers relied more on incarceration to control freed Black communities. Would you look at that? Would you look at that? Ain't that something? Ain't that something? Next thing, political imprisonment. Man, I gotta stop looking at the chat. Yo, y'all people in the chat, for the most part, y'all FBA people, y'all gotta be more interesting, man. Y'all gotta make more interesting comments. Like your comments are so bland and meaningless and void and just like, can y'all be a little bit more creative with your comments? Can y'all be a little bit more just like intelligent with your comments? Inquisitive with your comments? Like your comments are just so blah. And if you're a moderator, leave them alone. Let them do their thing, man. Let them vent. It's all good. Leave them be. So the next thing, political imprisonment, rebellion suppression. After uprisings like the Morant Bay Rebellion in Jamaica in 1865, thousands were arrested and many executed or imprisoned without fair trial. Labor protests. In the 1930s, mass strikes across Trinidad, Jamaica, and other inland islands led to mass arrests of union leaders and ordinary workers. Anti-colonial activists. Early nationalist and Pan-African leaders were monitored, jailed, and exiled by colonial authorities. Comparisons to mass incarceration. In the United States, mass incarceration exploded in the late 20th century with drug laws and policing targeting Black Americans. In the Caribbean, in the 19th and 20th century, colonial authorities relied on incarceration as a tool of racial control and labor discipline, not necessarily profit-making prisons. Still, the effect was similar, disproportionately criminalizing Black populations. Examples: Jamaica, after Morant Bay, over 400 people were executed and more than 1,000 imprisoned under martial law. In Barbados, in the 1876 Confederation riots, hundreds were jailed for resisting union with other islands. And in Trinidad in 1937, the Butler oil field riots, thousands were arrested as colonial authorities cracked down on labor unions. So in summary, says ChatGPT, yes, colonial powers in the Caribbean used mass incarceration as a tool of control. It wasn't identical to Jim Crow mass incarceration in the US, but prisons, vagrancy laws, and mass arrests after rebellions served the same function, keeping the majority Black population under political, economic, and social subjugation. You hear? You heard? Yeah, man. So post-slavery treatment, slavery treatment, and pre-slavery treatment, it was all the same. We all had the same experience. Our whole experience was similar. There's nothing experienced in America that wasn't experienced by everyone else in the diaspora. So there's nothing that makes the experience of FBA, the slavery experience of FBA, more unique than everyone else. You're not unique. You're not special. You're just like everyone else. You know? And the sooner we come to accept that, the sooner we can move on with our business, whatever that business is. We can move on with our business. Is that business going to be Pan-Africanism? No, no. I don't support that business that we move on to be Pan-Africanism. That's not my goal. You really want to be an American, your business should be to get on to being a good American. Stop trying to be a black American, the only black. Just be an American. Be a part of the American family. It's way more meaningful. Being a part of the American family is way more meaningful than being a part of the black family, because being a part of the American family comes with rights. Rights which are protected. Being a part of the black family comes with no rights, nothing. It grants you no rights. It grants you nothing other than emotional stuff that you make up. Emotional stuff that you make up out of thin air. You just create an emotional connection to Africa. And if an emotional connection is what you need, then have that emotional connection with your country. It won't be any less made up than your emotional connection to Africa that other people want you to have, which I don't really want you to have. And if you are going to have an emotional connection to Africa, let me say this, if you are going to have an emotional connection to Africa, if you must, that's fine, but it must not overshadow or be greater than your emotional attachment to America, to your country. Because again, your country is what gives you the rights that you value. And your country is the ones that protect those rights that you value. So nothing should trump that. Nothing should trump that. So let's just get on with being good Americans. Let's get on with being good Americans. Certainly as Jamaicans are getting on with being good Jamaicans. Get on with being a good American. Show them how to be a good American. Show me I'm not the only one with an American dream. I dare you. Show me your American dream is more of a paradise than mine. Show me you can dream an American dream bigger than I can. Dream an American dream bigger than any t'other's dream. Dream big. If you built this place, have a big American dream. How you built this place, but you're afraid to have an American dream. Didn't you have an American dream while you were building this place? Did you build this place with no dream in mind? You must have had an American dream while you were building this place, right? You would have to have had that. So go back to that. Go back to having that dream and live it. Live the dream that your ancestors dreamt. Live that dream. You'll be in a much better place. Be much happier. But I've said enough, man. Don't y'all think I've said enough? DJ Biggs, have I said enough? DJ Big Mouth. DJ Big Mouth. Did I say enough? DJ Big Mouth that talk with his hands. How you got a big mouth, but you talk with your hands? What the hell? What the hell? Use your big mouth, yo, and talk. Hit the link and come up here. The link is pinned. The link is still pinned. The link been pinned. And all DJ Big Mouth can say is Jamaican Nightmare. All these jewels I'm dropping, all he could come up with is Jamaican Nightmare. You got to think bigger, DJ Big Mouth. Think big. Stop being a DJ Big Mouth and start being a DJ Big Thoughts. Think bigger, bro. Think bigger, bro. All right, man. Here, this one for you, DJ Big. DJ Biggs. Here's a big tune for you. Hope you like it.
I want you to listen very, very carefully.
Just because we're black, they say we are slaves. Speak of righteousness, they say we are praise. Just because we're black, they say we are slaves. Speak of righteousness, they say we are praise. Brought us from the motherland in bondage and chains. Bury our culture and change our names. They claim we're free, yet we are in pain. As long as there's life, there's a lot to gain. Just because we're black, they say we are slaves. Speak of righteousness, they say we are praise. Just because we're black, they say we are slaves. Speak of righteousness, they say we are praise. When God spoke his words, they said he was deranged. Marley sung his songs, they said the same. Malcolm X and Martin Luther fought relentlessly so we could be better. Just because we're black, they say we are slaves. Speak of righteousness, they say we are praise. Just because we're black, they say we are slaves. Speak of righteousness, they say we are praise. Brought us from the motherland in bondage and chains. Bury our culture and change our names. They claim we're free, yet we are in pain. As long as there's life, there's a lot to gain. Just because we're black, they say we are slaves. Speak of righteousness, they say we are praise. Just because we're black, they say we are slaves. Speak of righteousness, they say we are praise.
Hey, peace. What's happening, everyone? On I deal with.
Ooh, yeah.
Suddenly there came a sound from heaven, as of a rushing mighty wind,
Like the rushing of a mighty wind. Like the rushing of a mighty wind. Come and fill our hearts again. Like the rushing of a mighty wind.
Yeah, blessings. Once again, you know the routine. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. All of that helps. So you don't know. Without any further ado, let's get started. Yesterday we were talking about Pan-Africanism, the African Union, and just the whole reparations, the whole African Union reparations movement called the Global Reparations Fund. And we did a comparison of the Pan-African reparations movement with the FBA reparations movement, just to kind of give us an idea of the pros and cons of each and how they kind of, compare to each other. So today I'm just gonna continue on the lesson about the Pan-African
Pan-Africanism, the African Union, and continue with the whole FBA discussion along with that, comparing their reparations movements, seeing which one is more of a seeing which one is more of a viable reparations program, and and just taking it from there and see where it takes us, what ideas it brings to our minds, and just pretty much going from there. So we're going to continue the conversation today. The question is, first question I asked is the African Union a Pan-African organization? Yesterday's show, we spoke about Pan-Africanism, and one of the questions we were trying to answer was, what is something concrete that Pan-Africanism can show that it has delivered for Black Americans? So we're going to chat GPT it. It said the first question is the African Union a Pan-African organization? And ChatGPT says yes, the African Union is widely considered a Pan-African organization, though with an important distinction between its political structure, the Pan-Africanist ideology it draws from. What the Pan-African Union is. So it is a Pan-African organization, but with clear distinctions, I guess, or maybe not so clear. I think there's a political distinction with the two. But regardless, it's still a Pan-African. It does follow Pan-African ideology. So let me repeat myself, since it's possible I wasn't being heard properly. ChatGPT says yes, the African Union is widely considered a Pan-African organization, though with an important distinction between its political structure and the Pan-Africanist ideology it draws from. What the African Union is. The AU was established in 2002, replacing the earlier Organization of African Unity, OAU 1963 to 1999. It is a continental union of 55 African states headquartered in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Its goals include unity and solidarity among African nations. And I think that's the underlying foundational idea behind Pan-Africanism, is unity and solidarity among African nations. So in that sense, the AU is indeed a Pan-African organization. Another goal, political and economic integration of the continent. Again, that too, in my estimation, is a Pan-African goal. Peace, security, and human rights is the next goal. And the last one, promoting African development through collective action. I don't see where any of those wouldn't be accepted as Pan-African goals, from whether we're talking about the AU or just local Pan-African groups here in the diaspora. I think even Dr. Umar would agree with those points and say, yes, those are Pan-African ideologies or Pan-African goals. The Pan-African roots, now it gets a little into the Pan-African roots. It says the OAU, the AU's predecessor, was explicitly inspired by Pan-Africanism, the belief that all African peoples, both on the continent and in the diaspora, share a common destiny and should unite politically, culturally, and economically. Again, the OAU, the AU's predecessor, was explicitly inspired by Pan-Africanism, the belief that all African peoples, both on the continent and in the diaspora, share a common destiny and should unite politically, culturally, and economically. Pan-Africanist leaders like Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, Haile Selassie of Ethiopia, and Julius Nyerere, I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, Julius Nyerere, that may even be more wrong, of Tanzania were founding figures. The AU continues in this tradition by emphasizing African unity and rejecting neocolonial domination, maintaining ties with the African diaspora, which the AU recognizes as the 6th region of Africa. So we are the 6th region of Africa as far as the AU is concerned. Which is kind of nice. It's kind of nice, I think. And they also host initiatives like the Global Reparations Fund, which was started in 2023 with CARICOM, the Caribbean Community. Yeah. Then it goes in a little bit, then it says it is not pure Pan-Africanism. It says the AU is a state-based intergovernmental body, meaning its members are nation states, not all people of African descent worldwide. Its members are the countries. Countries are members of the AU, not individual people. True Pan-Africanism as an ideology often envisions deeper political unification, even a United States of Africa. You know, and I'm drawn closer to Pan-Africanism and the AU in this sense, that they want to name themselves after America, the United States of Africa. I mean, you gotta love it, right? I know I do. I appreciate it. I think that's a good move. And, you know, more than just taking their name, they may also want to consider taking the Constitution, the ideas behind the Constitution, because hopefully, you know, my view of Pan-Africanism is that they lean, you know, communistic in a way. But again, that's just my view of Pan-Africanism. And it may be unfair to say so, but the reason I'm saying so is because I know, given the Pan-Africanists that I know and that I encounter, they're all anti-capitalist, right? They're all anti-capitalism, which is why I'm giving them the communist label. And I don't think that's unfair. They get at least the socialist label, you know? I don't think that's an unfair classification to put them into. But that is the United States of Africa. Now all they got to do is take on our Constitution, copy our Constitution, allow people to have those freedoms that we enjoy here. And I think, you know, they'll have something worth celebrating. It says the AU, while symbolic of that vision, works more like the European Union, coordination, not full unification. So it's more like the European Union. The bottom line, says ChatGPT, the African Union is a Pan-African organization in structure and inspiration. It was created to fulfill the goals of Pan-African unity, solidarity, and collective progress. However, it operates within the practical limits of state sovereignty, so it doesn't fully embody the radical Pan-Africanist dream of a single African superstate. And that's the, I think we said that was what they would consider the United States of Africa, but the AU does not envision that type of superstate with their Pan-Africanist vision. In their Pan-Africanist vision, we learned that each African state, Caribbean states, people in the diaspora get to retain their sovereignty in terms of their nationality. ChatGPT actually recommended, after I asked that question about the AU and whether it's Pan-Africanist, ChatGPT suggested that I look into the 6th region. And this is how the AU connects with the diaspora, like Black Americans and Caribbeans. So I took ChatGPT up on its offer and asked for further information about that. So we're going to learn about the African Union's 6th region concept. And ChatGPT says it's actually the clearest way that the African Union connects Pan-Africanism to people outside of the continent, which are Black Americans, Caribbeans, Black Englishmen, and just Black people everywhere in the diaspora. I don't think that their program leaves anyone out. It's pretty all-inclusive. So here's what it says about the African Union and the 6th region. It's the 6th region because Africa is split into 5 regions: the North, the South, the East, the West, and the Central. So this is the 6th region of the African Union. First thing is what it means. The AU officially recognizes the African diaspora as the 6th region of Africa, alongside the 5 continental regions: North, South, East, West, and Central. This was declared in 2003 Maputo Summit in Mozambique and reinforced at the 2008 Global African Diaspora Summit in South Africa. I would like to know if those were viewed or presented as Pan-Africanist summits. They may be, who knows. It says it defines the diaspora as peoples of African origin living outside the continent, irrespective of citizenship or nationality, who are willing to contribute to the development of the continent and the building of the African Union. So they want to deal with people who want to contribute to the development of Africa and to building the African Union. The main goal of the African Union and the creation of the 6th region seems to be the development of Africa. And it's all centered around the development of Africa. And given that it's about the development of Africa, I think that's kind of what makes me not choose to not consider myself a Pan-Africanist, because I'm an American and my goal is the development of America. I think it's in my best interest. I think that my nationality is what connects me to the things in life that matter the most to me. I get things from being an American that I can never get being a Pan-Africanist. So I see where the things that I value, I get out of being an American. And because of that, my main priority is the development of my own country. And I think for some reason, I have it in my head that Pan-Africanism wants me to redirect that shift from being an American to being more concerned about the development of Africa. And, whether that's true or not, I guess my goal is to figure out if that's ultimately what they're trying to do. I think that's what they're trying to do. They want me to have more affinity towards Africa than to America. And I don't think that's in my best interest as an American. So, for that reason, I'm choosing not to say I am not a Pan-Africanist, because I don't know if I'm willing to make that commitment. I don't even really make that commitment to Jamaica, where the only development that I'm concerned with Jamaica is just the development of my own home and my own little corner of Jamaica. So, outside of that, I'm not a part of any type of organizations for the development of Jamaica on any type of, international level, where from here, my goal is to support Jamaica with whatever they're dealing with. I don't do any of that. I think that, my number one priority is me and my country. Because again, I think that when my country thrives, that's how I thrive as an individual, and that's how my family thrives. And I'm all in it for my family and doing what's best for my family. And I don't see any connection more important to me than my national connection and my connection to my nation. So we're talking about the 6th region, and the next thing ChatGPT goes into, after mentioning that it's strictly about development of the continent and building up an African Union. The next thing is who is included, and it says African Americans or descendants of enslaved Africans in the U.S. So African Americans are part of that 6th region. I know FBA probably doesn't consider themselves to be a part of that 6th region, but I'm sure Pan-Africanists that are here absolutely count themselves as part of that. The next people included are Caribbeans, such as Jamaicans, Haitians, Trinidadians, etc. Also, Afro-Latin Americans from Brazil, Colombia, Cuba, etc. So, this isn't just about what we would consider Black immigrants from Africa and the Caribbean. The 6th region apparently also deals with Latinos, I guess what we would consider Afro-Latinos. So whoever falls into that category also is part of the 6th region. Because I think, normally when we think of Pan-Africanism, I don't think people consider Latinos to be a part of that. But the African Union apparently does consider them to be a part of that. Blessings to everyone that's coming into the building. As you come in, please hit that like button. It would help me out a great deal if y'all would just click that like button. It costs you nothing, but it puts joy to your heart when you click that like button. So if you can kindly do that, it would be amazing. If you're here for the first time, welcome to the channel. Hit that subscribe button. If you don't mind, hit that subscribe button. I got good stuff to share with you. If you click the videos, you'll see nice videos of very good conversations. We are building the channel like the AU was trying to build up the African continent. So, hit subscribe, man, and hit the notification bell. So you can hang out when I go live, or you can check out the videos if you miss me when I'm live, because I try to put them together for you. So we got African Americans, Caribbeans, Afro-Latin Americans in the AU as part of the 6th region. And the next group are Europe's African diaspora, such as UK, France, Netherlands, etc. And it says essentially all people of African descent outside of Africa who identify with the continent. And there it is, as long as you identify with the continent. So since FBA doesn't identify with the continent, it's safe to say that FBA would not be a part of the 6th region. The AU doesn't count them as part of the 6th region if they do not identify with the continent. and they themselves don't count themselves as part of the sixth region. I'm pretty sure about that. I don't think it's up for debate about that. Now, the sixth region and why it matters. It says it makes the diaspora part of Africa's future, not just its past. And that's a powerful statement. It makes the diaspora part of Africa's future and not just its past. Because again, you know, the goal is to build the continent. Their goal is to build the continent. As certainly as, according to FBA, they built America, the AU wants the diaspora to help build Africa. You know, so it's a building process. The next reason why it matters is that it aligns with Pan-Africanism's idea that Africa and its diaspora are one people with a shared destiny. Africa and its diaspora are one people with a shared destiny. And, you know, because we have a shared destiny, then we must be a part of Africa's future, according to the AU. It gives, and the last reason it gives for why it matters is that it gives the diaspora communities a recognized role in AU programs and policy making. Yeah, so, you know, they're not just asking us to build Africa, but I guess we are being granted a recognized role in programs and policy making. So the diaspora does get to have a voice in policy making and to decide what the future of Africa looks like and what path it takes. The next thing are examples of engagement, and how I presume this is going to speak about how the AU engages with the diaspora or the sixth region. The first form of engagement is through citizenship gestures. Ghana's Year of Return in 2019 and Beyond the Return offered citizenship and land opportunities to African Americans and other diasporans. Also, there's the AU repatriation programs, encouraging diaspora investment, skills transfer, and business ties. The next thing it mentions is the Global Reparations Fund. And we spoke about that pretty in depth yesterday. The GRF, or the Global Reparations Fund, was launched in 2023 along with CARICOM, or the Caribbean Community, and it's directly linking African nations with Caribbean reparations movements. If I'm not mistaken, I think the Caribbean reparations movement may have come before the AU reparations movement. I could be wrong, but I'm going to say that they are linking on to the Caribbean's movement. And that's one of the questions I would want to ask as well. So to revisit, the forms of engagement are citizenship gestures, repatriation programs, the GRF, the Global Reparations Fund, and the last thing is the AU Diaspora Parliament or forums, which are ongoing discussions about how to integrate diaspora voices into AU governance. So this, I guess, presents an avenue for, bringing to fruition the promise that people in the diaspora will have a voice in policy making. The next thing it speaks about are the limitations of the sixth region. It says the sixth region is symbolic and consultative. It doesn't give diaspora communities the same decision power, the same decision-making power as African states. Representation is still being worked out. how do millions of African descendants abroad vote, quote unquote, vote or participate in AU structures? So those are the two things that it lists as limitations. You know, it's gonna be, I think, really difficult to make the sixth region feel as if they do indeed have a voice and that that voice is being heard. So the bottom line, it says, is that the AU's recognition of the diaspora as the sixth region of Africa is a Pan-African gesture that connects Black Americans, Caribbeans, Afro-Latins, and others back to Africa politically, culturally, and economically. And I keep saying, you know, I think it's unfair to say that Pan-Africanism hasn't done or isn't doing anything tangible for Black Americans or for the diaspora. Because I think the idea of, especially the idea of citizenship gestures, repatriation programs, such as investment programs, skills transfer, and business ties, I think those are indeed tangible things that can be, you know, held up as Pan-Africanist victories, if you will. So it says it doesn't mean the diaspora has full AU membership, but it creates a formal bridge for cooperation on issues like reparations in the form of the AU and CARICOM Global Fund, repatriation and dual citizenship, investment and development partnerships. Yeah, and I think that's pretty respectable. I'm not mad at that at all. That sounds like a pretty decent plan. ChatGPT then requests or recommends that I look into how Black American leaders and organizations have responded to this AU sixth region idea. And that's a very good suggestion, I think, on behalf of ChatGPT. It's right along the lines of what I'm thinking about or what I should be thinking about. I think sometimes my ChatGPT reads my mind. So I said, yeah, man, let's hear it. Let's see how Black American leaders and organizations are responding to this sixth region idea. I think that is pretty interesting. It says Black American responses to AU's sixth region. One is positive receptions, unity, and reconnection. Many Black leaders and Pan-Africanist groups welcomed the sixth region as a historic recognition. Civil rights and Pan-African activists, figures like Julius Garvey, son of Marcus Garvey, praised it as a realization of Pan-Africanism, linking Garvey's Back to Africa vision with modern African politics. So the Garveyites are appreciative of these gestures, as they should be, I think. I think that these are real positive gestures put forward by the AU. You know, just what it speaks about with the citizenship, repatriation, investments, things like that, I think are a really good direction to go in terms of Pan-Africanism. I think this is the sort of Pan-Africanism that should be highlighted. I think that it's a shame that the Dr. Umars of the world kind of overshadow the great work that's being done here, or the great gestures that are being put forward here. Because I think this is really what Pan-Africanism is about and should be about. It's a shame I'm too much of an American to be a Pan-Africanist. But let's see how. Let's continue reading. Another positive reception is the Pan-Africanist organizations such as the Institute of the Black World 21st Century, called it a vital step to formally include diaspora voices in African governance. And I agree, it's a good step. I don't see it as a negative step at all. I think it's at least looking to open dialogue, which is vital. So I'm not mad at that. I agree with the IBW 21. It is indeed a vital step. The next positive reaction is, or reception, is that some African American religious groups, cultural and religious leaders, it says some African American religious groups, especially those with Afrocentric or Pan-African teachings, example, certain Black churches, Rastafarian communities, embraced the symbolic reconnection to Africa. I'm not surprised that the Rastas is for this. I think the Rastas absolutely embrace this. You know, I think I was a Rasta in a former life. And I think it's the Rasta part of me that's recognizing this and appreciating this. So I'm not mad at this at all. I'm not surprised that the Rastas appreciate it. And I'm not surprised that there are Black churches as well that appreciate these gestures. The next group that it speaks about that are positively receiving this are grassroots activists. Advocates for repatriations in the US saw it as a way to globalize the reparations struggle, tying Black America to Africa and the Caribbean. So even grassroots activists in America are appreciative of these gestures. And again, I'm not surprised about that. I think even Dr. Umar would appreciate those gestures. Yeah, and I can't imagine, I'm familiar with a few Pan-Africanists online, and I can't imagine that they would have any good reason to not support these gestures. And the second thing it goes into next are the cautious optimism, symbolic but limited. It says some U.S. Black intellectuals and organizations supported the idea but questioned its practical input. I'm sorry, let me read that again. It says some U.S. Black intellectuals and organizations supported the idea, but questioned its practical impact. So there are people that aren't as receptive, or let me use the terms that ChatGPT says, they have cautious optimism. The first group are academics and scholars. It says many Afro-American scholars, example, Molefi Asante and other Afrocentric thinkers, noted that while recognition is powerful, the diaspora still lacks formal political power in the AU. Yeah, so they still think that all of this is just symbolic. There is no real power. You know, the talk of having a voice and creating a space where their voices can be heard is one thing. But whether or not anything that they say is enacted is something else. And there are people that are skeptical of that. There are people that think that this is just one big scam to build Africa. And I think FBA would be among those voices that say it's more in their interest to build up their homeland of America. And that this is just Africa's way of trying to draw funds away from America and into Africa, and that they don't really have any true intent of giving Black Americans any voice in the future of Africa. So there is indeed a lot of skepticism, I think. The next group are, or rather the next reason that academics and scholars oppose it is that they warn it risks being more symbolic diplomacy than real governance. Yeah, which is just another way of saying what I just said. So the next thing is black political figures that are not so optimistic, or that are cautiously optimistic. It says some African American politicians and diplomats supported stronger ties, but others stress the need for the AU to deliver tangible programs, such as scholarships, business access, reparations advocacy, not just ceremonies. Not just ceremonies. You know, I'm surprised that that they don't really acknowledge the citizenship gestures and the other repatriation stuff that's happening. But I don't think that what they are requesting are horrible ideas either. Scholarships, business access, reparations advocacy, stuff like that. But, you know, I don't see why it's asking too much for them to include those things. Because again, I think the AU will be taken more seriously, I think, or that their reparations fund will be taken more seriously by the diaspora when the African Union, you know, acknowledges its role in the slave trade and is the first to put something in that fund. I'm not accepting this talk of they don't have anything. They have many things. They have many things. They have so much that they've been colonialized for all that they have. So they do have stuff. They can offer, more of them can be offering citizenship, scholarships, business access, and even the reparations advocacy for local reparations struggles, if you will. So I don't accept that the AU or that African countries don't have anything to pay in terms of reparations. I don't accept that. Even if it's a little something, put something in the fund so that those European powers know that you're being sincere. Because if you don't acknowledge your role, you won't be acknowledged as being sincere. The next thing it goes into is, instead of just cautious optimism, there's actually skepticism and criticism, which is distrust of African governments. It says not all Black Americans sees the AU's sixth region as positive, and they are skeptical of African elites. It says critiques argue that many African governments are themselves compromised by corruption, neo-colonial ties, or repression, making the AU a weak vehicle for real Pan-African empowerment. And they just don't trust the AU. The discussion we had yesterday, the panel, most of the Africans and the African Americans, if not all of them, said they don't trust the AU. So that's a major problem for the AU. And I think it's going to always be a problem, because corruption has been a part of Africa's, downfall for many, many years. So, and it's going to continue to be, because I don't know if I think getting reparations is going to be a lot easier than getting rid of the corruption that's in Africa. And getting reparations is going to be supremely difficult. But the corruption is really the main reason why there's this large mistrust of African governments. It also says some grassroots activists in the US say the AU is too controlled by heads of state and not the people. The AU is too controlled by heads of state and not the people. Yeah, the AU represents countries, they represent nations, they don't represent individuals. And that's the main difference between reparations that they're seeking and the reparations that FBA is seeking here in America. FBA is seeking reparations for individuals, and the AU is seeking reparations for countries. And the reparations money is going to go to the heads of state, and they get to decide what to do with those reparations fund. Will they decide to give out individual checks? I don't know. Who knows? I doubt it, but who knows? But FBA is asking for straight payments to individuals. They think that individuals have the right to do with the money as they see fit, because it was their ancestors that were enslaved, and it's payment for work they did as far as they see it. And certainly enough, the next skeptic group that they go into is FBA, Foundational Black American, the FBA perspective. It says some within the FBA movement reject the AU's gesture, arguing Black American struggle is specific to U.S. slavery and systemic racism and shouldn't be merged into a broad Pan-African identity. They feel that having this broad Pan-African identity takes away from their claim here, their individual claim here, that it takes attention away from it. It brings in other legal stuff that may take away from their case here, if you will. And so they just don't want to be a part of it. They see the AU's 6th region as symbolic Pan-African public relations, rather than addressing the unique claim Black Americans have on the U.S. government for reparations. So that's why they're not wanting to be a part of that Pan-African thing. They're more concerned with their unique claim that Black Americans have with the U.S. government. But my criticism to that criticism is that I think Black Americans also have a unique claim to the British government that enslaved them for longer than the U.S. government did. Let's remember that America came into existence in 1776. So their reparations claim is going to have to go from 1776 onward in terms of the U.S. government. I don't see where, if the U.S. government is to say it's responsible, which I don't think it is, but if the U.S. government is going to claim responsibility, it's only going to be from 1776 onwards. Those are the only ancestors that the U.S. government would and should have a right to say, or, a right to say, these are the people we're going to compensate. Before 1776, that was all the British government. If FBA claimed they were enslaved from 1526, that was the Spanish that did that. So they're going to have to go to Spain for their 1526 ancestors. If they're talking about 1619, that's the same thing. That's not the American government. That's the Spanish, Portuguese, and British governments. And I don't see why they think they don't have a unique claim there as well. It's just crazy to me. Like, why you don't see that again? And it's not as if that's a different case. That's a totally different case, separate from your local case against the American government. So I don't see, and I don't get why that's not important. It was explained. I've listened to viewpoints on, just the idea that they think it takes away from their other case. And it may, but, I just don't get it fully myself. So the next thing ChatGPT goes into is the key examples of response. Hit the like button, please. Hit that like button. Do it now. Do it for Africa. Do it for America. Do it for the world. Hit the like button. Just do it. Just do it. All right, so let me go back. Key examples of responses. Supportive ones in 2012, the AU Diaspora Summit in South Africa included African American delegations who endorsed deeper ties. There were also some Black American professionals that have joined AU Diaspora initiatives, especially around investment and trade. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot that can happen in the realm of investment and trade and citizenship and just repatriation overall. I think there's a lot of doors and windows that can be opened to people that identify with the continent and want to get that done. Because I've also said that I feel it's a joy to me to have a home in Jamaica. And, you know, I would encourage anyone to have a home elsewhere, especially if you identify with that elsewhere. If you identify with Africa and you own a home in Africa and you get citizenship in Africa, if it's as meaningful to you to have that connection with Africa that I feel with Jamaica, man, do it. Because it's an awesome feeling, I think. So just do it. And I think, you know, I don't see anything wrong with that. I also don't see anything wrong with FBA trying to, you know, state their claim as being American. And I don't see a problem with that either in claiming America as their homeland, because they don't have that national connection to Africa that Africans do. You know, they have a continental connection, but they don't have a national connection. They have that continental identity that makes them Pan-Africanists. And if they do that, great, they can become citizens of some nation and then have that national connection. But FBA, in my view, is trying to have that national connection to America. And I'm not knocking them for that. The only, you know, well, I do knock them for that in that they just refuse to not call themselves just American. And I think that they are not as patriotic as they could and should be. But the fact that they are claiming America as their homeland is a step in the right direction. And, you know, baby steps, I guess. So I'm not mad at that. I'm not mad at that at all. But again, we are talking about key examples of critical or skeptical responses. It says critical responses. So those were the supportive responses where people were interested in those investment and trade stuff and just having closer ties. But the critical ones are that at the grassroots level, groups like certain FBA and ADOS activists openly reject AU diaspora integration, stressing that Black Americans, I'm sorry, let me read that again. So the critical skepticism, at the grassroots level, groups like certain FBA and ADOS activists openly reject AU diaspora integration, stressing that Black Americans must focus on the US government's debt to its formerly enslaved population. So, yeah, their main goal is, listen, we're only concerned with us, bro. So that's what that is. I think I've said enough about that and the FBA's criticism and just their lack of an urge to identify with the continent. And I think the main reason that is because they don't have that national connection. You know, they're just Americans, Black Americans that need a national connection in order to have that continental connection. And there are some that I guess don't. There are some that get their DNA test and their DNA test says 68% Nigeria and they're Nigerian, bro. And that does it for them. But there are others like FBA that be like, listen, man, that DNA stuff is It's for entertainment purposes only, and they're not entertained. But it is what it is. It is what it is. So the bottom line, as far as ChatGPT is concerned, the bottom line is that many Black leaders view the AU's 6th region as a Pan-African milestone, a bridge connecting Africa and the diaspora, especially in global reparation struggles. Others see it as a symbolic but weak. Others see it as symbolic but weak, unless it provides real political representation, economic benefits, or reparations leverage. Yeah. Oh, it says a vocal segment of Black America, especially FBA and ADOS voices, rejects it, focusing instead on securing reparations within the US rather than aligning with Africa. And it goes on to makes other recommendations, but I rejected them. I had enough. I think, that's pretty much what I was looking for, is just seeing just how it's being received, how the idea of being the 6th region is being received. And, the reception varies. There are those that are quite receptive to it. There are those that are cautiously optimistic. They like it, but they're cautious. They are having trust issues. And then there are others that are just like, nah, bro, we don't need it. We're good over here. And so that's where we are. What's happening, Leonard? Leonard? You look frozen, Leonard. Are you frozen? All right, Leonard, listen, man, I am going to get ready to shut this thing down. I was getting ready to shut this down. Maybe come back a little bit later. But right now, I got some yard work I need to get done. So, I'm going to shut this thing down. So I'm hoping you can unmute yourself or whatever. But until then, listen, people. Listen, people. Thank you all for coming out. Sunchild, bless yourself. DJ Big Moat, bless yourself. Infinity, bless yourself. Dex, what up, Dex? Big up yourself. Everybody in the place, big up on yourself, yeah. But yeah, my goal is to get some yard work done in the evening as it's cooling down. So I'm gonna take care of that mission right there. So I'm gonna free myself up. Thank you all for coming in. Thank you all for coming in. You're done. No, I'm gonna catch y'all on the next one. All right. All right, y'all be good.
I want you to listen very, very carefully.
It's all about life in the street. People are suffer, try survive in the heat. Bad mind them out to one hygiene a do it. That's why enough of them get rifle a beat. Everybody want big ups and want to drive in a Jeep. Every day I'm at the ball when she buy in a read. Not even 5 bills you can't find for the week. Me no see no changes, the same cycle repeat. Give thanks cause life it's a sweet. But keep an eye open every time you go slave. Cause mankind jealous and them idle go rape. Them never yet plant and not try figure rape. Bigger heads where you fight for the sake. Now care about the future nor the child where you creep. Them a pray the fat Kyle with some meat. The system will slide where you fit.
In the streets so we born and grow. Only Jah know and nobody know.
When we talk about ghetto life, talk about ghetto life.
Everybody a priest, say them want it out. That's why them a speed and they pan the go.
Cause this a real ghetto life. This a real ghetto life. Yeah. Everybody just a pre-success. When me looking at the street, you me see enough stress. Them all a fight for who reach up next. Everybody want floss and a beat up chest. Juvenile in a them teen love sex. Them a breed the fast money, them no need subjects. And if you're unfortunate, please don't vex. I saw the thing said, cause the streets don't rest.
In the streets where we born and grow, only Jah know and nobody know.
When we talk about ghetto life, talk about ghetto life.
Everybody a priest, say them want it out. That's why them a speed and they pan the go.
Cause this a real ghetto life. This a real ghetto life. Yeah. It's all about life in the street. People are suffer, try survive in the heat. Bad mind them out to one hygiene a do it. That's why enough of them get rifle a beat. Everybody want the ghost and want to drive in a jeep. Every day I'm at the ball when she buy in a read. Not even 5 wheels you can't find for the week. Me no see no changes, the same cycle repeat. Give thanks cause life it's a sweet. But keep an eye open every time you go sleep. Cause mankind jealous and them idle will live. Them never yet plant and not try figure rape. Bigger heads where you fight for the seed. Now care about the future nor the child where you creep. Them a pray the fat Kyle we submit. The system will slide where you fit.
In the streets where we born and grow, only Jah know and nobody know.
When we talk about ghetto life, talk about ghetto life.
Everybody a priest, say them want it out. That's why them a speed and they pan the go.
Cause this a real ghetto life. This a real ghetto life. Yeah.
Very careful.
Tell the youth them to be strong. You can't tell the youth them to preach wrongs. While you try it on these lands, just remember every man is equal. Yeah, each one teach one. And our Father God, him are the only done. So make we ease and reason. Smoke trees, span the ends, all the deep meds. Take a look at life and don't close your eyes. Sometimes things happen and it's no surprise. And I just so it go. It's the government no have no heart, them no care about poor people. Yeah, bigger heads no love people again. Them more than little of them. We see friends now reason again. Vex through whistle a blame. What time it hurt me to see how the face deal with the eagle of them. Regular me see it a pain. Take a look at life and don't close your eyes. Sometimes things happen and it's no surprise. And I just so it go. It's the government no have no heart, them no care about poor people. Social commentary, drop the one your principle, you don't know the global will comment with. Some people life every day it's stress. The high price from JPS, that topic is currently. Jah alone him a go help you. We need food and we no healthy. We a feel the pain, beg you protect we. In our life we have no fanfare. Take a look at life and don't close your eyes. Sometimes things happen and it's no surprise. And I just so it go. It's the government no have no heart, them no care about poor people.
righteousness, they say we are praised. Brought us from the motherland in bondage and chains. Bury our culture and change our names. They claim we're free, yet we are in pain. As long as there's life, there's a lot to gain. Just because we're black, they say we are slaves. Speak of righteousness, they say we are praised. Just because we're black, they say we are slaves. Speak of righteousness, they say we are praised. When God spoke his words, they said he was deranged. Marley sung his songs, they said the same. Malcolm X and Martin Luther fought relentlessly so we could be better. Just because we're black, they say we are slaves. Speak of righteousness, they say we are praised. Just because we're black, they say we are slaves. Speak of righteousness, they say we are praised. Brought us from the motherland in bondage and chains. Bury our culture and change our names. They claim we're free, yet we are in pain. As long as there's life, there's a lot to gain. Just because we're black, they say we are slaves. Speak of righteousness, they say we are praised. Just because we're black, they say we are slaves. Speak of righteousness, they say we are praised.
Suddenly there came a sound from heaven, as of a rushing mighty wind,
like the rushing of a mighty wind, like the rushing of a mighty wind. Come and fill our hearts again, like the rushing of a mighty wind, like a river that is overflow, like a river that is overflow. Come and fill our hearts once more, like a river that is overflow. Let it overflow, let it overflow, let it overflow, let it over, let it overflow, let it overflow, let it overflow, let it over. And let the people come from miles around as you send your spirit down, just to revive your church, to revive your church again. Please come in like a rushing wind, like the rushing of a mighty wind, like the rushing of a mighty wind. Come and fill our hearts again, like the rushing of a mighty wind. Let it overflow, let it overflow, let it overflow, let it over, let
as you send your spirit down, just to revive your church, to revive your church again. Please come in like a rushing wind, like the rushing of a mighty wind, like the rushing of a mighty wind. Come and fill our hearts again, like the rushing of a mighty wind, like a river that is overflow, like a river that is overflow.